right, and we are recording.
Okay.
So, yep. So the title of this little talk is Bridges of Meaning, Gaming, and Kids. So, um, I'm Carlos, and I'm a dad, and I also play video games. So, um, that I think is the best way to introduce myself in this conversation. So, I've got two kids. Uh, a 4-year-old son and a 2-year-old daughter, and one on the way coming this January. It's a girl. I don't think she'll be playing. I don't think the new baby will be playing video games yet anytime soon. But yeah, and
hmm
so can I get a brief intro from you two guys?
Sure.
I presume
Uh,
you both of you also are into gaming. I don't know if you call yourselves gamers, but yeah, there's a reason
I
why you
don't know
guys are
that
on here.
that word tends to have a negative connotation, so I usually don't use that one. It's kind of a funky word, but I do play video games. Um, I'm Andrew Kelly, and I don't have any kids, but uh, I'm interested in this conversation because I'm also interested in if I do have any kids for the future, how I would handle that with them. And as someone younger who does play video games, I hope I could contribute something to this conversation.
Nice to meet you, Andrew.
Nice to meet you too.
So how about you, Mike?
Okay. So my name's Mike. I'm 37 years old. I've been married for 10 years, and we had 3 children. And I've been playing video games since probably the late 1980s. I was never like when I was growing up. I wasn't really a hardcore gamer. I guess you could say I was casual because I did a lot of other activities. But as I got older, and I probably my teens, it kind of became more of a hobby. And then when I had kids, they were introduced to video games because I played video games. But I knew that I think with the generation that's of age now, like my children's generation, it's become more of a mainstream thing, more accepted. It's not so much like, the nerdy kid or whatever. It's pretty much like most people play video games that I see in my kids' age. So it's definitely something that is, I think parents these days have to uh, pay more attention to than my parents did when we were younger.
hmm Yeah, it's definitely much more mainstream. I remember when I was in school, I was surprised at the amount of people that were playing video games and who had an Xbox or something like that.
I
Like
think
even all the
there's probably a lot of people that our age, like I was born in '83, so I think there's a lot of people in the late '90s, or in the '90s, like people that grew up with who probably played video games. It just wasn't, um, it was just something that people did casually. I think it wasn't as, people weren't as quote unquote hardcore as they can be now. Probably more people played it than we think. Because in my mind, when I think of Nintendo, I thought I saw them everywhere. I saw Nintendos everywhere, even though you look at the sales numbers and they were significantly lower compared to now. I still felt like I saw them everywhere. But
hmm
Yeah, um, yeah, I was born in '88, so I think my first video game ever was Tetris, because
Mm.
yeah, when did Tetris come out? It came out in the '80s, and I think Nintendo licensed it in '87, and
hmm
it was either Tetris or the first Super Mario Brothers, um, or Duck Hunt.
yeah,
Yeah, it was one of those. My my um, grandparents actually had an NES. We didn't have our own game console, but they did have an they both had an NES and a Famicom. Interestingly enough, because
Oh,
neither system was originally released in the Philippines. Um, but so what people did was they imported them from the US and Japan. So they ended up having both consoles. Yeah, and so I think that was my introduction to gaming. The first video game console, because my parents didn't really buy, they didn't really spoil us with toys, and there was,
Mm-hmm.
I think, a lot of wisdom in that in hindsight. Because I was I remember being pretty jealous of all of my friends and relatives who had the fancy latest and greatest video game consoles way back in the day. And
Yeah.
when I would ask my parents, "Hey, can we have a PlayStation?" and they just say, "We're going to your cousins this weekend. They have one. You go you go play the whatever games with them." It's
yeah, we never had a. I remember the first video game I ever played. My parents rented an NES. It's probably around 1988. Um, they rented an NES, and I think it was California Games or Guerrilla War. It was like an arcade port. It was those two games. One was a Commodore 64 port, the other one was an arcade port. I mean, I don't know if you know, Andrew. Do you know what a Famicom system is? What
I've
um,
heard Famicom. Isn't that the company?
it's actually the Japanese version of the Nintendo Entertainment System. So,
Ah,
so yeah, so in Japan they called it the Famicom. So
I'm not too
Carlos, that's
familiar.
yeah. So that then and they had a lot of the same games, and then they had different games because a lot of games being ported to North America and made into English, and some of them were changed and censored and altered for the audience in North America. So that's why they
Mm-hmm.
called the Nintendo Entertainment System and instead of Famicom. I think it
Oh.
stands for like family computer or something like that. I'm not entirely sure, but anyway, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the NES was probably the first console I played, though I had family friends that had Commodore 64 and Ataris, and I think it was in television or something like that, like those old late 70s, early 80s systems. So I remember playing on those randomly here and there. We didn't actually get a Nintendo until probably 89 or 90, um, when I think my mom bought it off of some friends, a used one, and then gave it to us for Christmas. So um, yeah, and we didn't have a lot of games because actually where I lived, it was more common for people to rent games than to buy them because they were really expensive. So you'd go to a movie store and pay like $2, and you could rent it for 2 days or a day or 2 days or for a weekend. And so we did that quite a bit. So we got to try all these different games for the system. It was kind of neat that way. It's something that you don't see a lot of people doing anymore, obviously, because a lot of those
Mm-hmm.
video stores don't exist anymore.
Right.
yeah. And meanwhile, over here in Asia, since none of these game consoles were really officially released, I don't think we even got the PlayStation 2 here officially. I
Hmm.
it was probably the PS3 that was the first, shall we say, um, official release by any mainstream video game console maker. Um, so way back in the day, we would have these systems come in, and they would all be modded so that they can play pirated games, and
Oh yeah.
and and we'd get all of the bootleg stuff from Hong Kong and Malaysia when it will cost you like a dollar per disc, right? So
Wow.
I literally had dozens of PlayStation games in my library way back in the day. You know, even for a broke high schooler, third world kid. You know, so
Uh-huh.
There's a will,
so
there's a way,
Wow.
man. There's
yeah,
a will, there's a way.
yeah,
Yeah, I remember hearing about that PlayStation 1 mods. There were some interesting mods people did where you could install a chip in the system, or even one which involved opening the disc and putting a specific game in, and then taking the disc out and then putting in the burnt game, and it would load the game. There's different methods, but yeah, I think there's a chip you can buy, and then you install the chip into the system, then you could play burnt games. And I believe the Sega Dreamcast, which was released in 1999, I believe that system you didn't even need to modify. I think you could just burn games and it worked, but I could be wrong. But that makes sense. In a lot of the third world countries, people finding ways to pirate pirate games to make it cheap and easy to access.
Hmm.
yeah. And the side effect of that is I got pretty hooked into this stuff. Um, I would say it peaked um, when I peaked in my like gaming hobby addiction, if you can call it that. But I see the kids now, especially in China and South Korea and stuff, and I'm like, was I addicted to video games, or was just a really really into it? Like, but these
Hmm.
other kids, they take it to a whole new level.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
Oh,
I
I've heard, yeah,
yeah,
stories. Yeah.
I think I was playing something like 30 35 hours a week at peak. I would say peak gaming.
I've been
Hmm.
there. Probably not. I don't know about. I think it depended on whether I was working or on holidays or. Um, so when I was a kid, um, my parents kept me really busy. So I did do a lot of video gaming, but it was usually when like I got home from school and if I didn't have anything to do outside, pretty much going outside was my first priority, playing outside. But if the weather was crappy or, um, you know, if there was a specific game I was wanting to play, like if we rented a game for the weekend, we would play, for maybe an hour at a time and then go do something else or watch a movie or whatever. Like, I don't think when I was little, I spent a lot of time. I spent enough time, but not enough that it was a problem. Then as a teenager, I worked 30 hours a week and went to high school. So I would play usually in the evening, like when I got home from work, especially if I didn't have school the next day, but probably an hour or two a day in high school if I wasn't watching a movie or doing whatever. And then I think college was probably when I spent the most amount of time because I had the most amount of time. Unfortunately, I had the least amount of money, so it was one of those situations where I had lots of time to play video games, but I didn't have the money to play. But I mean, I had lots of games because I would always keep my games. I always did retro gaming, and my brother would always buy the systems, and so I probably played like. If it was a weekend and I didn't have to go to school, yeah, I probably would say at least 30 hours a week at one point I was probably spending playing video games. But then mind you, I wasn't going out and drinking and doing other things, you know. It didn't help with my social life or meeting women and stuff, but I didn't really have any money anyway at the time, so we would just hang out and play video games. Like I had guy friends and that's what we would do. But I mean, aside
Yeah,
from
me too.
sometimes Dungeons and Dragons or something. But um, yeah, so I think it was an age thing. As I got older though, and I had more responsibilities, there was a period actually where my gaming dropped to um, very little. Sometimes I might even go a couple days without touching a video game. Um, Again, depending on what was going on in my life at the time. Lately, I've been playing more so just because of COVID and just you know needing to force myself to have downtime. But I don't feel bad about that because I uh, I think I meet a lot of my responsibilities that I don't feel bad about playing video games when I want to play them nowadays.
Hey,
So
you've
anyway,
done what you got to do, you know.
yeah.
Yeah, same here. My mom was actually pretty disciplined, and she set a rule that, hey, if you've got school today, no video games for that day, right? So
Hmm.
that meant that we could do games on weekends. If it was a holiday, maybe, but if it's Christmas, uh, family first, and then you play your games later after all of us are done eating and opening presents and stuff, right? So yeah, that sort of limited our absolute video gaming time, and she was also pretty disciplined at enforcing our bedtimes, right? So like it's five in
Hmm.
the morning. It's 5 in the morning right now, so you can see it's still pretty dark, and I've been waking up at it's I schedule this at this hour because it's actually a lot easier for me to do it in this hour because around 7 a.m. the kids will start waking up and they have to prepare breakfast. Yes,
Hmm.
and yeah, so so
Yeah.
so I've been waking up at 5:30 in the morning for the past 25 years maybe, thanks to my mom, right? And
Wow.
same with Mike, that I probably peaked in my video gaming when I was not actually when I was in college, but when shortly after college. Because when I was in college, I would um, I didn't have a game console. I just had my PC, and I had a few games on that, but not a lot. Mainly because I was constrained with hard drive space and and all of that. Um, I
I
probably
remember
peaked in
those
my
days.
yeah. I Yeah,
Hmm.
and it's now a problem with games being hundreds of gigs now.
It
Eh,
is.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I
remember I had
just
8 gig hard
installed.
drive, and
I'm
go
always
ahead, Andrew.
constantly uninstalling games to put a different one on.
Well, now with the solid state drives, especially, right? Like, the hard drives, oh, you got a terabyte drive, oh, no big deal. But it's like, well, now you need a solid state drive. And if you want to buy one at a reasonable price, you're going to get like a 250 gig or 500 gig. And, you install a couple of AAA titles, and they're like 50 gigs, sometimes 80 gigs. You're like, oh, well, I'm running out of space here.
Yeah, they get
It's
really
like,
large. The indie
yeah,
games
it's
are
like
very
having a,
small, but the AAAs,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's the thing I was going to comment on is that when we were growing up, movies were took up a lot of our time. I think as far as entertainment went, like watching movies and television shows. But now, AAA titles are like movies on them, in and of themselves. And I think I might be wrong in this, but I'm pretty sure I'm correct in that the gaming industry is actually making, I think, more money than the movie industry lately, the last couple of years. So I think it's starting to come and almost replace movies, um, and the amount of time people are spending in that entertainment medium with television or whatever. People are,
Hmm.
are playing video games instead of watching movies. I think people still watch movies, but I think the younger people probably play more games. I mean, even myself, I'd rather play a game than watch a movie nowadays. So what about you, Andrew? I mean, like what about you when you were growing up? Like how much time did you spend playing video games?
A ton. I probably have both of you beat.
It's
But
okay, don't be shy.
as a kid, I didn't play much because I had three siblings, so we were usually doing other stuff most of the time outside or and then maybe at night or on the weekends, my brother and I would go play something on the PlayStation 2. But as a teenager and as a high schooler and so on, I eventually got on my own computer and started playing PC games. So although I usually play them with my friends and stuff, like I'm usually not playing alone, but uh, it did take more time when I started doing that instead of playing on because I was able to go online with that one, I think. So with the PlayStation 2, I had to have other people around usually to play with, but now I don't necessarily need other people to play with other people. You know what I'm saying? I don't need my friends around to be playing with other people. But
Yeah.
yeah, for me,
Was it like
I
a
didn't
World of
play.
Warcraft or something?
Uh, Not that one specifically, but I do play a whole bunch of different things. But yeah, when I was young, we didn't really play video games as much, but we did play a bunch. My older brother and sister and I, we all liked playing Pokemon games and a lot of different. I would often watch my brother play games on the computer and the PS2 because some of them were just single player. So it's pretty
Sometimes it's
funny.
fun to watch, right? It's fun to it's fun to
Yeah,
watch people. Some people like to do that. They like
yeah.
to watch. My brother had a best friend when we were growing up that was really good at video games, and we used to love watching him play because like we were never good enough to beat the game, but he was always good enough to beat the game. So we would
Oh
watch him
yeah, yeah.
play. Oh yeah, he was like the wizard, like in that movie. Like he could just play any game and just master the game. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, but I found it pretty funny though. Later on in my life, when YouTube came around and people started playing video games on YouTube and uploading them there, and people would watch it, and people would say, "Why would anyone want to sit there and watch someone else play a video game? What's with these crazy people?" I'm like, I was doing that since I was like 6 years old,
Yeah, that's
just
right.
watching my brother play.
Yeah,
Why did I want to do that? I don't know.
and there's now a multi-million-dollar industry around. Well, not just streaming, but pro esports gaming and stuff.
In Korea,
Oh yeah.
especially, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I've heard about that. That South Korea, a lot of it started with Starcraft in the late
Starcraft. Yeah,
'90s. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
remember that.
interesting.
I remember when that came out. I was in grade 9, and we had just gotten a new computer. We had a 386 that my dad bought in the early '90s, and back then, the computers are expensive now, but they were even more expensive back then. Like 1993, my dad bought a 386, which at the time was actually coming out of. It was a 486 that was the new chip, the Intel chip, and he got somehow duped into buying a 386 because it had a CD drive in it, CD-ROM, and that was like, ooh, CD-ROM, and had no sound card, a measly 4 megabytes of RAM. Anyway, uh, what was the point I was trying to make? So, anyways, yes,
Starcraft.
we got this computer, yeah, and we finally got a new computer in 1997, and it was like a Pentium 233 or whatever, and we got StarCraft, and I remember it was like the first game I connected and to the internet and played against somebody else over the internet. Like I had played, um, I might have played Doom multiplayer like in a network possibly before that, but I can't really remember. But anyway, yeah, that was the first
Hmm.
game was StarCraft, and I remember playing against somebody and I got beat because I used a really bad strategy. I thought it was a good strategy, but it wasn't. And I thought I had like solid tight. My base was defended, and then he just went in there and like took me out from the inside. It was my first experience. Anyway,
Yeah,
so that there was
that's
that
what
and
happens.
Star Wars Jedi Knight, Star Wars Dark Forces 2, I think was another one with my first experiences playing online. And you had to get a third party software to do it called GameSpy. Yeah. That's
Oh
when that all
wow, wow.
started. Yeah.
I've used
Yeah.
that.
That was in those days, that was kind of that's when it all kind of started. I mean, it was around before that, but that was when it was starting to really pick up was the late '90s. The
Hmm.
online elements. Yep. Now it's mainstream in the consoles. It's everywhere now.
Yeah, even in the consoles too. Yeah.
Hmm.
yeah.
It
I
didn't take
remember
me to.
Starcraft. Sure, go ahead, Andrew.
Okay. I was gonna say it didn't take me long to find any game that was online once I started playing on a computer. It's really common.
Yep.
Yeah, so we're getting into online games now, and I remember Starcraft. Yeah, this was we had my family had our first PC in the year 2000. That's also the year that our household first got online. So I guess compared to you guys, a little bit late. We had a dial-up modem, and I remember that game having a dial-up peer-to-peer functionality. Is I guess what we'd call it now.
Hmm.
So me and my cousin we'd first call each other and say that, hey, you up for a round of StarCraft? And he'd host it, I'd connect to him, and then our moms would be mad at us for tying up the modem for the next 3 hours, or the phone line rather. So
Yeah, don't feel bad, you know what? Because I lived in Alberta, Canada, back in 2000. And I still had a dial-up. I still had a dial-up modem because they hadn't gotten high-speed internet to my town, and I remember that too. And someone would pick up the phone, and you'd get disconnected. Oh, who picked up the phone? And then you'd always get disconnected, and then they'd
That
get
is
mad. Get
hilarious.
off the phone. Get off the internet. I don't even know how I did it. Like with the amount that I'm online all the time, right? You're online all the time. I don't even know how I managed having to use dial-up and I think about the amount of time I spent online as a teenager from like 1997 to 2002 when we got like high speed internet, or back then what was considered high speed. It was like 1 megabit per second or something. It's considered high speed. I just
Mm.
remember that, like, being on dial up, and I remember websites, not they didn't take long to load because the way they were designed for dial up. So like they wasn't necessarily
Right.
slow, but I mean it did
yeah,
take long to download stuff, right? But yeah, I don't know how we did it back then with tying up the phone line and only being able to have so much time. And yeah, I just it amazes me when I think about it.
and one of the games that they first played online, um, I didn't really play Starcraft online. It was just me and my cousin doing it. Um, the other game that I mean, I never really played that online, but I used to play a lot of Counter Strike. But here
Hmm.
in Asia, computer cafes are a big thing. So yeah, like after school, I'd not eat lunch and just use my money to have to play an hour of Counter Strike, with my friends, or sometimes not even with my friends, with random people, and
Hmm.
I got into a couple of fights doing that actually. so so
Wow.
so it's different when you're like trolling random people online, and then if they're right next to you, they like will get up and
Yeah.
like like smack you. so so it was a lot more hazardous to do that. And I
Yeah, you
remember,
can't do that now.
yeah, I remember being quite the troll. Well, there is swatting nowadays, which is like
Well, that's a
insane.
different kind of
Yeah.
swatting.
Yeah.
Yeesh.
Yeah, but
So anyway, so go ahead. You're gonna say something.
yeah, the first game I actually played online for any significant amount of time was Free Space 2.
Oh
So
yeah,
so
that was a good
so
game.
and now that I remember it, I was on 56K, and the Free Space 2 netcode was not very sophisticated. And it's not a particularly fast-paced game, but it is a like space combat sim. So it's not like
The
it,
best space
yeah,
combat sim.
the best.
The
Unfortunately,
best.
also the last one. Um,
Yeah.
but so it wasn't like an FPS level fast-paced game, but I still remember playing it on dial-up, and in hindsight, it wasn't really all that enjoyable because you'd have your ships and missiles teleporting all over the place because your computer was trying to figure out where it is really supposed to be while it's trying to update from the network. And
Yeah.
but I somehow managed to rack up enough uh, enough um, game time on that to be able to get up a few ranks. I don't remember what rank I ended up in. And it wasn't
Hmm.
the nice thing about the free space community is it wasn't very big. So you ended up playing with more or less the same couple of dozen of folks every single time. And
That's
and and
cool.
so and so
And they're
yeah,
still out there. They're still out there
they're
at Hard
they're,
Light
they're still
Productions.
they're still out there. They're super hardcore. It's just like
Yeah.
the most. Just like it's
The
small, but
most modded.
it's like super hardcore. Some of the mods that came out now, like
Oh yeah.
Blue Planet,
They're still
it's like
making
yeah,
mods for it.
yeah,
There's people that are still doing, like, the game's like 20 years old, and they're over 20 years old, and they're still making things for it, still making mods. And I haven't been on that community for a while, but yeah, it amazes me. Like, people just, Yeah, in that game. I mean, they do it with a lot. There's people still do it with a lot of different retro games. I think they did it with like Return to Castle Wolfenstein and games like that. People are just to go back and make mods and improve it. And there's people they did that with Doom and Wolfenstein. I think it was called GM Doom or GD Doom or something. And you can play it using like the Vulkan engine and everything. It's crazy. So anyway, I was gonna ask. So Andrew, oh no, Andrew, you said you didn't have any kids. Carlos, you said how
Right.
many kids? I missed what you said because my internet had cut out right at the beginning of the conversation. So, um, how many kids did you say you had?
I have two kids. It's gonna be three this January, but
Okay.
my
Hooray.
my s- um my first kid he's a boy. He's 4 years old. Um, he likes playing video games. He's not very good at them. Not very good at them yet. But we have a Nintendo Switch and we play uh, Yoshi's Crafted World. He's actually like reasonably competent at that. I just set it into the easy mode and give him the second
Mhm.
controller, and I can ask him to do things like, hey, shoot this thing in the background, collect that thing, and he can do it.
Mhm.
Um, if you give him enough time to do it.
That's cool.
Yeah. We also play um, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. I'm not very good at any sort of fighting game. Um, so we just set the computer to like level two. You know, there are like 10 different
Right.
um, computer levels. So
It does get very difficult. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
You were
He
saying,
yeah
oh, go ahead.
yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
I was gonna say, so you were telling me earlier, like in a conversation, that um, something about having to speak to parents about kids and video games, or was that you that was telling me about that?
Yeah, yeah. The reason why I actually wanted this conversation, and in fact, we've been talking for half an hour, and all of this background, all of the background information about growing up and how the video game industry has changed, how our habits of consuming media have changed, are all very helpful build up to actually to this actually. So I've been
Mhm.
approached by some folks because I'm part of a, let's call it, a marriage and family ministry, and
Mhm.
so some of the more senior people um, have approached me asking, what's your opinion on video games, right? So should we let people, or should we let our kids play video games, and how much, etc., etc.? Because they know me. I play games. I play games with my kid. My daughter isn't really that interested, it seems, but she likes watching me and her brother have at it anyway.
Mhm.
Um, so and I said, you know what, that's an interesting question. I didn't really know how to, like, I didn't really have any systematic answer to it, and I said, you know what, I'll I'll think about it, because I but you have to be one thing you do have to watch out for nowadays are online games. You know, I gave them
Mhm.
that warning specifically, right? So there's a lot of pitfalls to this, and in my own experience, because like my own experience of online games was mainly constrained by my dial-up connection, number one,
Mm.
and also with like the aforementioned free space 2 community, it's pretty small. So
Mhm.
if you got banned from one server, then you got banned from like 20% of all of them. so
Yeah,
so you didn't want to piss people off, um,
yeah.
and yeah,
Yeah.
so
Well, I I don't know what it's like what's popular in the Philippines, but I can tell you right now. So as far as video games that kids are playing right now, that I've noticed, at least in my region, where I live in Canada. There's like 4 games that seem to be really popular amongst kids, like talking to my friends or people that I work with. Um, and I believe they all have online and are designed to be played online. So one of them, the first one is Minecraft, which I'm sure you've all heard of. I don't think it's as
Mm-hmm.
popular as it was 2 years ago, but there's Minecraft. The second game that's very popular with kids is a game called Roblox. It's a game similar to Minecraft. It's basically all content created stuff. The kids make their own content and make their own. Some people make games; they can make their own rules, et cetera, et cetera. There is Among Us, which is a more recent game that is very popular. And then there's Fortnite, which I think is probably the most popular out of all of those games right now, for like all age
Mm-hmm.
groups, because people of all ages play Fortnite. As far as Minecraft goes, I believe it appears to me, or appeared to me, that it was dominated mostly by kids aged 8 to 12, at least going back to 2018 and 2019. Um, and Roblox seems to be a lot of children aged 8 to 12 as well right now. Among Us, uh, I would say, probably is got a broader audience similar to Fortnite. There's a lot of kids 8 to 12 that play it, but I think there's a lot of teenagers that play it as well, and adults. And Fortnite is another one that I would say it's probably more kids. Fortnite's kids that are maybe more 10 to 18, at least in my area, that are playing it. um, Fortnite is a first-person shooter game, but it has elements of construction and built into it. And there's different. It's a free-to-play game. It encourages you to buy to earn Fortnite money within the game, like experience that you can buy stuff in the game, or you can just pay money to, like any free-to-play game.
Mm-hmm.
You can pay money to get skins and different perks for your characters. But they do give you a way to earn things just by playing the game. If you play in the game enough, just like a lot of the other those other free to play games, you can play with certain restrictions or play the game and earn experience points and just buy things. As far as Among Us goes, I don't know as much about it. It's basically, as far as I know, it's a game where you're like these little alien, like marshmallow looking alien things, and there are you're on like a ship, or you're somewhere, and there's infiltrators, and you have to figure out who's infiltrating and kick them out, or they kill you. Something like that. They sabotage your ship or sabotage you or something. I
Mm-hmm.
don't. And I already explained Roblox. And then Minecraft is basically, it's a first person perspective. It's like a pixelated style game. It was one of those games that you didn't really need very much in the way of specs to be able to play it, which it has advanced. Now you can get versions of it that use ray tracing, and which is a very advanced form of technology now that graphics cards are using.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, that's like a uh, you build up, you know, you find resources, you build a house, and you can have animals, and you can defend at nighttime. Monsters come out and blah blah blah. So those are kind of the big games, and they're all online, and they all are. Minecraft isn't free to play. You have to buy it, and there are things you can buy in the game, skins and whatnot, but it doesn't have the same element as the other Fortnite or Roblox with regards to encouraging children to buy things or bug their parents to buy them things. Um, Anyway, so those are the
Yeah.
4 main games. Now, I was wondering, do any of you have any experience with any of those games, or your kids playing any of those games? Andrew, obviously you don't have kids, but did you play any of those games?
I have played, let's see, I've played Minecraft, Roblox, and what was haven't played Fortnite. What was the fourth
Among
one?
Us.
Among Us. Yes, I've played that a few times. Yeah, I have played almost each of those. I've made a point of never playing Fortnite though. I just don't want to do that. I played a game like it, but I haven't played Fortnite. But I just have silly reasons for that. But anyways, yeah, I have played the other three, and I was younger when I played Roblox, and I did enjoy it. It's actually pretty cool how you're able to make kind of whatever game you want to play, and then make your own map for it. Like people have made uh, game servers where you can play hide and seek or something like Counter Strike, like a first person shooter. So you just look for a certain kind of game you want to play and then play it, which is pretty cool. And
It's like
I've played
children having it playing outside, right? Children creating their own worlds
yeah,
and changing the
actually
rules,
it's
right?
exactly. It's
Yeah,
like you make up a game and everyone figures out what the rules are, and then
exactly.
and
Anyway, sorry. Yeah, you continue.
yeah. Yeah, and I've played a little bit of Among Us, but I've only played it. I haven't played it online with random stranger people, but I've played it with people I know, and that one does seem a lot less involved in terms of actually interacting and communicating with other people, because most of the time you're not supposed to talk to each other until somebody dies, and then you have to meet up and talk about what happened. Uh, as opposed to a game like Roblox or I keep forgetting this other one, Minecraft, where you can talk whenever you want, pretty much. And and I have played Minecraft too. I've played a lot of Minecraft, and that one's also a fun one because uh, I mean, when I first started playing, I really liked it because it was you could do whatever you want. You could take apart any block in the land and build it up into whatever else you wanted it to be. And nowadays, people are designing all sorts of ways to modify it and play it in a whole different way, which is I always like that about video games. I always look to see if anyone's modifying the game, and I always see what I can put in to change it because I think that's really cool. People edit it to play it a different way. But yeah, for that one, I also haven't played too much with uh, people I didn't know online. I have done it a bunch of times, but most of the time I'm playing with friends. And usually you have to, for Minecraft, you have to go out of your way, as far as I know, for all the time that I've played it, to really play on a server with someone. It's not like Fortnite, where the entire point of the game is to play with other people. So it's just going to put you in a server with other people. But for Minecraft, you can play alone. So if you have to go out of your way to go play with other people in that one. So that's just a little bit of a difference, the online stuff between like Minecraft and Fortnite and Among Us that I can see.
Do
Uh,
your Carlos? Do your kids play any of those games?
So I've never played any of those games, not none of the above. Um, my son, he's 4 years old, is aware of Roblox and Minecraft mainly through his older friends and cousins, because he's a very sociable kid, and he really likes to hang out with the older kids, so they can see him they can see them playing with it, and they
mhm.
sometimes
So
they
in the
sometimes
in
just give
the
him the yeah.
so in the Philippines, those games, like, would you say that they're popular there as well? Then?
Yeah, I would say they're reasonably popular. Not as popular as what's really big here are mobile phone games.
Okay.
Yeah, and yeah, there's the probably the biggest one is called Mobile Legends, which is kind of a League of Legends knockoff
Mhm.
for mobile phones. so that one's pretty big, and you just see people playing it everywhere. You take the train, you take the bus, and you'd be sitting there next to a bunch of zombies that are just tapping away at their phones. And so 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 yeah,
Yeah.
that's the big thing here. I mean, yeah, Minecraft, Roblox, that stuff is around here. But what's the, the thing is, the really big thing here is like mobile phone gaming, because that's the one thing that
Oh, okay.
that's the
So even
one.
with the young people
Yeah,
too, then yeah.
yeah, that's the one device that everyone is guaranteed to have.
Right.
Right,
That's
Yeah.
funny though, because I don't play mobile games like at all. So
Me
people say
neither.
like, "Oh, look at all these people like zombies on the phone playing games." I'm like, "Ha, that's not me. I'm not on the phone. I'm the zombie who nobody sees who's at home playing the games."
Yeah.
I can't play them. My kids play them. I think the one game that I've tried that they had was a game called Geometry Dash, but that was, oh, it's been like a long time since that was a big game for the kids. But getting back to what you were saying about the parents asking about, should we let our kids play video games? I think this is an issue that goes back to um, the old idea, at least in North America, of parents, Christian parents, being afraid of their kids listening to rock and roll and playing Dungeons and Dragons, and like that whole satanic panic issues that was happening in the 80s. And I
Hmm.
think, um, so I think my wife was telling me, my wife is studying psychology, and she was telling me that there was a study that was done in the 60s by a Canadian, which has been since been debunked. A study that was done where he would have these children watch a television program or movies, and he would give them a doll, and he would show these videos of these kids or something being violent towards a doll, and so then the kids would be left alone and would emulate the violence towards the doll. And it was like this whole argument that what kids see on TV they'll emulate in real life. And so that was believed for a long time that video games cause violence because these kids play these video games and are violent, and it's going to make kids violent. And since then there's been studies that have shown it's actually what it does is more than anything is it would just desensitize kids to things more than actually cause them to be violent. They would just make it maybe desensitize them to violence instead. So if they saw like a movie where someone's getting their head like blown off, they wouldn't like freak out watch. I mean, it's be different in real life, but they would see it so much in a movie that it wouldn't freak them out to see it on a screen.
Right.
That they're in person it's obviously a whole different thing. But there's no real evidence to link kids playing video games and then going out and actually doing committing violent acts. If anything, what I have read is that a lot of younger people are, instead of going out and committing crimes and being delinquent with their friends, are actually staying home and playing video games instead and spending
Yeah.
more time on their phones than they are going out and being bored and causing trouble. Now, I don't know if it's different in every country, obviously, and I would take that with a grain of salt, but it is something that I read about as a possible reason for a decline in crime in the United States amongst certain age groups, especially violent crime. Maybe not like theft and things like that, but crimes that involve violence and serious crimes. And that it's the actual older generation X and baby boomers that are older and are still committing the majority of these types of crimes. But anyway, so I think there is a genuine concern, I understand, with Christian parents and their kids in video games, just like
Hmm.
they used to be worried about them watching certain kinds of movies. So getting to that,
Or reading
so
certain
these
kinds of
games,
books.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
um
That's a
so
valid
safe,
concern.
yeah. Safety, I was going to say safety is I think the thing is a lot of these games actually have safety protocols built into them um, to help parents monitor and in a way control what their kids are doing in these games. For example, Fortnite, um, in order to play Fortnite on the PC, you have to have an Epic account, which is kind of like Steam. It's a platform you have to install on your computer. It's a software platform that gives you access to the game. And in order to access the platform, you have to create an account. Now, if you put in your age as being under 13 or under a certain age, you have to have a parental permission. And so what happened is I created an account for my daughter to play Fortnite, but I actually literally had to here I said literally um I had to and my wife's always bugging me about that. Everyone on YouTube says literally all the time. Anyways, I had to I had to digitally sign a form saying that I'm allowing my child to access this platform. And then when
Ah.
my child played Fortnite, there was automatically, based on her age, certain restrictions were automatically put in place in the game, in at least that game, with regards to voice chat, any of the chatting programs. Like a lot of that stuff was automatically disabled or censored, and I had to re-enable if I wanted my daughter to be able to talk to my other daughter when they play together. I had to go in and enter the parental PIN number and then re-enable that function. So there are safety measures a lot built into a lot of these games now that weren't there when we were younger, and I think a lot of parents aren't aware of that, and they're not knowledgeable enough that to take the time themselves to go in and to monitor this stuff. Like if you know about video games and you know about all this stuff, it's not hard for you to go in and manage these things. Like for me, it's easy because I spent my life playing video games, and so I know I can monitor it a lot easier and control what they're doing. I could find ways to have them use, say, my account on their phone, so that I know what they're downloading and I know what they're watching on YouTube because I see it. Or there's software on the Android phones, for example, that tells you everything your kids are doing on their phones. So I think it's a matter of educating parents about these things more than anything.
Yeah. And that's why I think Carlos had a great point about online stuff. Uh, that's something to be very careful about because, if your kid's gonna go and play a game that's online, it's possible that people could be saying whatever they want, and maybe it's not blocked all the time, or somebody figures out how to say a word and written in a way that it gets past bad word filters or something. But anyways, I think it's like probably a good benchmark or something. I don't know if that's the right word to say that if you wouldn't let your kid go talk to strangers, you probably shouldn't let them play a game that's online where they could be talking to strangers. And even if you would let them walk down the street a bit or and maybe happen to talk to someone in the neighborhood that you don't know about them talking to at the moment because your neighborhood's pretty nice, online it could be anyone in the world. So it's
Yeah,
definitely something to be concerned about, especially with small children. But
yeah,
yeah, I didn't start playing games that were online that I could talk to anyone. And I was a teenager, I think in late middle school, and I think that's a pretty good point, at least. Because before then, I was just playing with my siblings and people in my neighborhood, and there was no online stuff when I was a little kid. So I mean, if it were me when I was a parent, I definitely wouldn't just. I I could probably, since I play so many video games, I could look at which games I've played and say, okay, I know what it's like to play this one, and which one's online, and what kind of people are there, and what kind of violence or what kind of violence isn't or is in these particular games. So I could look at them and easily say, okay, I think I know which ones I'd let my kids play, but I'm sure it's a lot harder for people that don't participate in that kind of thing. So yeah, definitely online stuff is very sketchy, at least. But when it comes to stuff like violence, uh, I mean, as a kid, my brother and I would often play a PS2 game called Star Wars Battlefront 2. And in that one, you're shooting each other, and he would like blow me up with rocket launchers and stuff. And I mean, we weren't violent people, so but definitely there's other games where there's tons of blood and gore and stuff, and that's just a little too much even for me. So I definitely wouldn't put my kids around stuff like that. But yeah, the question of violence and uh, what is okay for kids at any given age. I mean, I think of video games as just a form of entertainment, like other things, like movies and books. And so I think like, what kind of story would I read to my kid, or what would I be okay sitting with them watching in a movie? Like, I could read my kid Good Night Moon, but I wouldn't read them like Game of Thrones or something. So
Yeah.
Uh, I think it helps maybe to think along those lines. Yeah. So if you think along those lines, it's like, okay, what does this game look like? Like, what is it?
And you have the ratings, right? In the UK they have that PEGI, and then
Yeah.
Yeah,
in
there are
North
ratings
America
too.
the ESRB ratings. I think the important thing is that I think parents they need to take the time to do the research. They need
Definitely,
they
yeah.
need to find out, like, communicate with your kids. I know different cultures have different styles of parenting, but if they're concerned, definitely try to talk to your kids about like what games are popular. Find out what games are popular. Um, and then go online and do and try to do and research them and try to be realistic. Like, don't try to just go to Christian websites about this game. I mean, it's good to go to those sites because you're going to get an opinion and maybe with a biblical viewpoint or reference or whatever, but you should try to find a source that can explain what the game's about from a different perspective, and so you really know what goes on, and then you can make an educated decision, whether
Yeah.
the game's appropriate for your child. I mean, for my kids, so the my son, the first video games, he was the first one to really kind of play video games. My daughters, at first they couldn't really be bothered because they were they weren't really into that kind of stuff at first. But my son was about 3 years old. I gave him my Game Boy Advance. Like, we'd lay in bed, I'd read to him, and I'd show him, like, I had Super Mario 3, which was, I think, Super Mario 4 on Game Boy Advance, and so I let him play that because it's Super Mario, right? And kids love Mario, and so he played that. And so we
Hmm.
we had a Wii. We had a Wii. We got a Wii when my kids were, fairly. They were like toddlers still. We got him. I think we got it because my wife wanted to use the Wii Fit uh, program or game for it, but eventually it became like the game system my kids played. And so, like, we got, we had Mario, and my kids would play Mario, and like
Hmm.
the kid friendly Nintendo games. And then
Oh yeah,
it
definitely.
wasn't I think it wasn't until they were probably like 7 years old, like my son, when he started playing like Minecraft on the Xbox. um but yeah, most of the time they would play the games on the Nintendo, and I wouldn't let them play online. Like, I had a lot of that stuff disabled.
Right.
And somehow, of course, my son, being the way he was, he found a way around it when he started playing Minecraft, because he wanted to play against people online, because you'd see YouTube videos. They'd
Hmm.
have friends that would show them YouTube videos of people, and then they'd want to play it. And so he found a way. He'd use my account, because my account was the only one that had internet, that had Xbox Live on it, and he would use it to play. And I mean, the nice thing about it was that I would know then, because he's using my account. I would know, like,
Hmm.
if he's talking to anybody or who's talking to him or what they're saying or whatever. But yeah, so I mean, I was able to manage that at least, but they weren't playing like a bunch of online games or anything. It was, I think, Minecraft was the only one at the time, and it was very limited to, we monitored it very closely. And so, like, I tell them, don't add people as friends, and like that kind of thing. I wouldn't let them use the
Right.
voice chat, like the microphone that comes with it or anything. So anyway, yeah.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, I think that's pretty good. Um, it's good, I think, to hold back on the online stuff for a while. And
Yeah.
like you said, Super Mario, Nintendo. I think pretty much, I don't know the all of what Nintendo makes, but I think all the most popular Nintendo stuff are great games to play, like Animal Crossing, Super Mario Brothers, all stuff that Nintendo produced. I think Mario Kart. I guess that's Mario still, but like, pretty much anything that Nintendo makes is kid friendly and a great game to play. They're actually fun. And I don't know now though, but they probably have a lot of online stuff, so that's just something to watch out for. But older
I think
Nintendo games didn't have anything online, so it was just totally fine.
Well, and I think too, one of the biggest mistakes that strict Christian parents make is they try to. They're almost like they overprotect their children from the world. They try to
Yeah.
hide too much of the world from their children to the point where their children get older, and by the time they start being exposed to the world, it's like they'll become rebellious almost because
Yeah.
they either freak out or they become rebellious. And I think that the biggest mistake a lot of them make is they don't expose like enough of the world to their children so that they could kind of have an understanding. I think that it's not wise to hide, you know. I mean, you have to protect your children, and there's obviously with appropriate content and inappropriate content, but I think it's
Hmm.
important that you show your children things that are out there and that you could teach them from a biblical perspective, like what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate. I think that
Right.
a parent's job is to lay the foundation for their children, but at a certain point they're going to reach an age where they're going to go off on their own, and it's going to be up to them. And so I think that there has to be a balanced approach. And I think that if you educate yourself on what the games that are out there, because eventually they're going to play them, they're going to have friends that they're going to hang out with, they're going to play these games
Hmm.
eventually, they're going to be exposed to them eventually. I think that if you do the research, and uh, allow your child to play, these appropriate games with, boundaries. This is how much you can play. This is when you can play, whatever. I think that that's a good approach. I think completely not like cutting them off or not allowing them any video games is not a good idea. I think allowing them too much video games and not enough guidance is a bad idea. Just like non-Christian parents, I think that they could take a similar approach in that maybe they just could be a little more strict about what games they play at what age, whether it's violent or not. Um, but I think you don't want to smother them, and you don't want to,
Yeah.
you know, hide too much uh, from them either.
Yeah, I bet it can be upsetting for a kid if like their friends are playing stuff like Doom or something and they're still playing like I don't know, something like really babyish or something. It's like
Commander
uh,
Keen. No, sorry.
yeah,
If
like
anyone
something
remembers that.
really something really like kiddie-ish and stuff and they're like, "Oh, well,
Yeah.
I'm sure they'd feel pretty bad about that." So, it's definitely don't go way too far on making sure everything's perfectly safe. And yeah, I think it's a good idea to just be present with stuff that isn't so, bubbly and safe and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Educate yourself. And I think too, I mean, I think that I guess I mean everybody's different, every family's different, and you might have some kids that are might be more prone to addictive tendencies, and they might need stricter guidelines on how much they can play too. So
Hmm.
um, I guess again, that's being a parent and figuring out, your child's quirks and quarks, and um, just uh, um, being present, like you said, and knowing what they're doing, and just trying to be balanced. I think that's, to me, that's the most appropriate. And you'll know. I mean, if you do, you'll know. I mean, uh, and again, it depends on too on your, and not all Christians are the same either. So some are more literal, and some are more more liberal or progressive with their interpretation of scripture. And so, I mean, again, it all depends on who you're talking to, and
Right.
their beliefs. But bottom line, I think just what it boils down to is just doing your research and monitoring, and just being fair and reasonable and balanced.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. Because like I said, since I've been playing so many games, I could probably say exactly what I would be okay with my kids uh, playing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody else will think that exact
yeah,
same thing. So,
yeah,
yeah, definitely just doing your research and figuring out, okay, what is this game like? What is it about? Is there a story? What is the story saying? And what are the characters like? And stuff like
yeah.
that.
And sometimes these stories, it can be a good teaching moment, because if they play a game with a story that might be counter to your biblical beliefs, you can explain. It'd be a good learning moment for them, where you could say, this is what some people believe, but we don't believe this, and explain why. But because they're going to be confronted with that at some point in their lives as well. So you don't
Mm-hmm.
want to shield them too much from ideas that are non-Christian, because they're going to have to face them one day. And I think prepare that it's a good way to prepare them by when they're young. It'll be easier to, so they'll have a better understanding and way of defending their beliefs when they're actually out there and confronted with these different ideas, versus not never hearing them, and then going out there and then being challenged with all these ideas, and not knowing how to defend their beliefs, and becoming easily misled, which can also
Mm-hmm.
happen. I mean, I've heard stories of that happening to people too. Like I recently read about, well, it was probably about at least 6 months ago or a year ago, about churches. They need to, they wonder why the young people are leaving the church, and why young people are leaving the faith, and etc. And so preparing them, giving them the knowledge and the tools to defend their beliefs, or to I guess you could say steel man their beliefs, goes a long way, in an intellectual way, not just so they could defend their beliefs in an intellectual manner, not just in a limited capacity. I think understanding their scripture, and understanding some of the more deeper meaning behind things. Um so and I think that all kind of goes
Mm-hmm.
hand in hand, because video games are now such a mainstream thing that everybody's doing it,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. So I don't know how much this might help someone, especially someone who doesn't play a lot of video games, in terms of how to help them know what to do with their kids with this stuff. But I think for the most part, uh, people we kind of repeated stuff that people might have already known, like just be present with them for any stuff that happens with video games, and research it, and don't. I mean, I think maybe the online stuff was a good point, because a lot of there's a lot of crazy people out there, and a lot of people who get very mean and nasty when they're a stranger in a computer that they won't meet in real life. But uh, for the most part, I think it really applies to the same kind of method you would use with other entertainment, like movies or even books. So if you're someone who reads a lot or watches a lot of movies, and you think a lot about, well, what would I do with my kid with this sort of thing? It could translate a lot to video games. And but if you're someone who doesn't play a lot of video games, maybe a lot of the intuitions just aren't there with that sort of thing. So hopefully you could maybe find someone that that's close, that you trust, that has more experience with these things. You could have a conversation with them about it to learn that sort of thing. But I think,
yeah, don't run away from it. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
yeah, but I think a lot of the techniques kind of translate, just because I think about, well, there's video games that tell stories, movies that do that, books that do that, and I mean, video games do other things too. Like Minecraft doesn't really tell a story, but you can build things in it, and well, you could do that pretty much the same thing in Minecraft that you could kind of do with Legos. You put blocks together, but there's a lot more to it. So then, okay, well, what would I do with my kid when they're with Legos? What would I, you know, tell them to do or not to do with that sort of thing, I guess. So just looking at kind of what the video game is too might be a good idea. Like if it's a story game, then make sure you know what the story's about. Or if it's not, like Minecraft, make sure uh, you are kind of teaching your kid about it the way you would with anything else in the real world that's similar. Like I played with Legos a lot when I was a little kid, and uh, I'm sure there's something I don't know. I don't have kids, so maybe there's something you need to do with Legos that you don't do with the story. I don't
Trust,
know.
I think,
I
is
don't know if that
important
helps or
too,
not.
right? Well, I think there's a certain
Does that
level of
make any
trust you have
sense?
to.
Sorry,
Yeah.
what was it? What were you
No,
saying?
no, that's yeah. I was just saying, I think there's a certain level. This goes back to trust too, giving your kids a certain like amount of responsibility that you're trusting them to also make the right decisions too. Like if you're gonna teach them about what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, they need to be able to be in situations where they might come across a game and then they start playing it and go, oh wait, I don't think I should be playing this, and then they have the opportunity to say, to make that decision. And obviously, most of the time, they probably are going
Right.
to not make the right decision. But I think it's important to give them the opportunity to earn your trust or to, you know, make the right decision too, because I think that's an important
Hmm.
part of their development as well. Um, because again, when it boils down to it, like every kid's going to do it. Like the parents can't run away from this. Video games it's like movies. They're a mainstream thing, and all the kids are doing it, and you can't hide it from your kids. It's everywhere. So
Hmm.
running from it or trying to hide it or whatever is not going to work. You in it,
Yeah.
you just have to you have to educate yourself and accept it. Accept it. It's part of reality now. It's part of being a kid now, and you have to deal with it. They have to deal with
Right.
it.
But it's
So
not like something evil or terrible that everybody's doing that. Oh, well, if everybody's doing it, you can
yeah,
do it too, it's not that
yeah,
bad. So
yeah,
like
exactly.
I don't think video games are necessarily the devil or something like that, or
Yeah.
well, just because everybody's doing it, it's not that bad of a thing. That I mean, there are certain things that if everybody's doing it, you could still probably shield your children from it. But
Yeah.
I don't think this is that level.
So Carlos, are these people that you're talking, are they older? Are they our age or younger parents?
Yeah, it's a mixed group. Maybe I would say around the same age or a little bit older than we are. And
Mhm.
um, how old are your kids, Mike?
So my oldest daughter is in the eighth grade. She's just turned 13. And then my youngest daughter is 9. She'll be 10 in February. So I only have the two kids now. Unfortunately, my son passed away a couple years ago, so we just have the two now. But he would have been how old would he have been? Uh, he would have been 12. He'd be 11 right now if he was still alive. He'd be 11. And he was 9 when he passed away, turning 10. So yeah, he would have been at that age. He probably would be playing. Actually, before he passed away, like I noticed he started doing all these really weird poses. And I guess in Fortnite they have these poses that all the characters do, these emotes.
They
And
do.
yeah, um, I was gonna say too, and he had a form of autism called Asperger's. And my youngest daughter does too. And Minecraft actually apparently seem they use it in therapeutic ways, I guess, for some of these kids with autism in
Hmm.
schools and different activities. Apparently, those kids with autism apparently just love Minecraft. So it can be used as a tool in a very positive way. Especially for those kinds of kids, and a game like Roblox too, I guess. But yeah, so my 12-year-old, she or 13-year-old, I guess she's a teenager now. She's one that plays Fortnite the most, but she plays it with friends that are like her circle of friends that are from town, like her close friends. She doesn't generally play with people online. And the way Fortnite is that you could have like a small group, and what it'll do is you can go in and you'll fight like computerized opponents, but you can't tell whether
Hmm.
they're, at least I couldn't tell whether they're real people or computers. And they have their own they have all of their own like terms and everything that I hear them talking and saying like they call people that play hardcore, they call them sweats. And like, what is that? What is a sweat? And they're like, oh, that's somebody who's like plays, who's a serious player. And so like when we were younger, we had these. It's like they're creating their own language, just like we created our own language. And if you want to get into the whole philosophical discussion about that, you know, creating their own language in these video games and stuff, and it's quite fascinating actually. But
Hmm.
anyway,
Yeah.
my youngest, she's the one who's 9. She's the one that plays Roblox all the time, and they both would play Among Us like when it kind of reached like its peak in popularity about like 6 months ago. They were playing it on their phones again with their friends, and it's actually been a pretty good experience because for my daughter, my oldest daughter, because that's what they like. They do other normal kid things, and they go swimming in the summer and they do outdoor activities, but that's something that they do together, especially with COVID, and her friends actually haven't been going to school. They've been homeschooling and she's been going to school. So they at least, after school, if they can't go anywhere, they'll at least be able to play against each other. And
Hmm.
they're actually using Discord too. It's actually something that it's funny is becoming popular with these kids. Discord is
Hmm.
becoming popular with these kids who are playing Fortnite, at least with my kids. I don't know if it's because I introduced it to my daughter, but one day I saw that she had it and I was like, you have Discord. How did you get that? And I'm like, I don't remember putting that on there, but it's like, no, this is what we used to, and really that's what Discord was originally used for,
Yeah,
was
yeah,
for gaming. So anyway, I thought that was kind of cool too, how Discord is gotten really huge, and now these kids are using it for their games. And I didn't even have to like
Yeah.
introduce her to it. It just happened.
Yeah, I think that's a really good thing is playing with friends, and I do that a lot. Discord is definitely does a great job of allowing people to do that because before, most of the time, when I was in middle school and playing with my friends, we'd be using just typing to each other, or
Yeah.
rarely
Yeah.
we'd be able to use Steam to use voice chat, but it
Yeah.
wouldn't work a lot of the time, and we'd turn into like robot voices sometimes, and which is funny, but uh, yeah, Discord's really improved that, being
Oh
able
yeah.
to play online with friends and stuff, and I think that's a great thing. Even
Yeah.
like as a little kid, playing with other people was great. Maybe playing online would not have been a good idea for me, but with strangers. But yeah, that's definitely a great idea, I think, because then
Well, I
they
just
do
remember
get to
the
make
chat spams, right? The chat
what's
spams.
that?
People used to spam the chat, the text when when there
yeah,
was no voice. They were just spamming it with all kinds of garbage.
Oh
yeah.
yeah, yeah. There's spams. There's bad words. They'll insult you, and then they'll
Yeah,
sit in the spawn where you join into the game and you're ready to, you're on your two teams, and then they're just sitting there shooting you every time you come back into the game. People can really get on your nerves, and they
yeah,
still do that. Even today, I was playing a game with a friend, and some guy's standing there shooting me every time I spawn, and yeah,
Oh,
it,
and
it gets
that's speaking of kids making their own rules. And I remember that people would develop their own rules around those games, like no spawn camping, and if you get caught, you'd get kicked out. And even now, like a lot of
exactly.
those rules are enforced. Like people make their own rules around these games that the developers didn't even create. It's that these that have now become mainstream. Where at one time, when Battlefield 1942 came out in 2002, or games like Quake 2 or Quake 3 or whatever, these terms of spawn camping and all that became a mainstream thing. And so then when they started making games later on, they would automatically implement these policies into the games where it wouldn't allow you to do it.
Right.
Whereas before, people had to create their own boundaries. They'd have a server and they would say, like, if you got caught doing that, you'd get kicked out. And there's a lot of things that have
Hmm.
come a long way since then. Like when we were young, like I always joke and say that when I was an adolescent or teenager, it was like the wild west of internet and wild west of internet gaming, because it was like it was complete free for all, and everybody kind of managed themselves, and every group had its own little everything
Hmm.
was kind of being managed that way, and almost like an anarchist type environment, you know and you had the moderators, and we called them mods, and or admins, that would
Hmm.
kind of make sure the rules were being followed. And Yeah, it
Right.
was, and you had a lot of, people would say, you didn't always have the swear filter, so people would say some pretty vile things.
Mhm.
You learn to just ignore it, but again, I think that if my parents knew, obviously it was new to them too, right? So like if they
Mhm.
knew, if I knew how dangerous and bad it was, like you wouldn't, I don't even know what to say about that. Like
Exactly.
it was quite the it was quite the Wild
It's
West.
amazing how vicious can people can be in a video game.
Oh yeah, especially if they can, if the guy you're trolling or griefing or whatever can't punch back. Oh, they
Yeah, they
they do it
can't
with
punch
they
back. Yeah.
they do it with impunity. Like I said, you
Uh,
uh, I didn't really have broadband internet till like the mid 2000s, and it was like
Mhm.
512K is considered broadband. It sounds ridiculous now.
Mhm.
Hey Mike, I'm so sorry to hear about your son. I adore my kid, and I can't imagine losing him.
oh no,
So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
for
No,
sure.
thank you. He really liked video games. We actually we have a Minecraft themed box for his ashes that we keep in our living room there. That the one of the people that worked at the funeral home, they used like a one of those wood stencilers, like you could burn in image into the wood, and they drew like a Minecraft character onto it. It was pretty neat.
That's
So
cool.
yes, I mean he liked his Minecraft. He really liked that game. So
Mhm.
yeah, Minecraft will always kind of have a special place in my heart or whatever. I've never been a fan of the game like myself to play, but like I'll always think about, like whenever I think of Minecraft, I'll probably always think about him because he was pretty good. I remember he was 8 years old and he beat that Zelda, what's it called? The Call of the, oh, I should know this.
Breath of
The
the
one
Wild?
that's it, Breath of the Wild. I was gonna say Call of the Wild. Yeah, he beat that. Yeah, like I have a video of him like fighting Ganon, and I'm like, what are you
Mhm.
doing? He's like, I'm fighting the boss. And he like went through the game and got all of the secrets and everything. Apparently this
Wow.
game was huge. And I remember thinking like, where did you find the time to do this? Because I remember like I'd be come home from work and I don't remember him spending that much time in the game. I'm thinking like, and I figured out he must have been getting up in the middle, and I did. He would get up in the middle of the night and play video games. And I got to a point where I would have to, I guess getting back to the parenting video games, I would actually have to go downstairs. And so down in my basement here, I have I have a TV mounted on the wall, and I have a table that like that's split in half. You know those tables where you can fold down the sides. I don't know if they're like
Mhm.
Right,
circular
right, yeah.
tables that you could fold down. So I have
Mhm.
one of those tables, and so I have like an old VCR DVD player, and then I have an Xbox 360 and then a PS3 sitting on top of that, and then I've got a Wii and a Wii U, like all in this little section, right? And then I have like a retro Super Nintendo mini thing, right? So, anyways, I'd have to go down there and before I went to bed, and I would take all the controllers out, and I'd even have them all nicely on the shelf. I'd have to take them all off the shelf and put them in a bag and take the bag upstairs and put it in my room because it was the only way I could stop him from playing video games in the middle of the night because he'd get up and then he'd be like, oh, there's no controllers. So then he'd go back to bed or he'd do something else. But yeah, because he'd get up and he usually get up for school for 7 in the morning and the bus comes at 8 in the morning. He'd get up at like 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning and play video games all morning and then go to school and then fall asleep at school. And it's like, it's like, oh
Sounds
man.
like me.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember doing that too. And not because my parents restricted me. Like I said, my mom was pretty disciplined with our bedtimes. But back in the day, the way dial-up worked here in the Philippines is um it's not a big thing in the developed world, but you used to have these prepaid cards where you can. I mean, I'm sure you've heard about prepaid electricity in Africa, where they hook you up to a
No.
meter and you buy credits and load your meter with credits so that you get electricity. So
Mhm.
you don't have to pay a deposit to get hooked up, and you just pay whenever you have money to pay, and you get electricity, or when you had electricity to pay. So in our case, it was the internet. You'd go to a shop and buy let's say 100 pesos is like $2. That's good for like 20 hours of internet. But
Mm-hmm.
if you connected between midnight and 5 a.m., as long as you had any credits, it will not be used up.
Oh,
Hmm.
Right.
wow.
So what I actually had, I set my alarm to 12 a.m. This is when I was playing Ragnarok online, and
Mm-hmm.
that game soured me on online games for the next decade and a half. But that's another story.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd set my alarm to um like 11:50 in the evening. And then when I turn on my computer, I have a script, and I was like 13 years old or something, or 14 maybe. No. I was like 15. Yeah, when Ragnarok Online was a thing. I had a script that when you opened it, it would automatically dial, and then if you get a busy signal, immediately redial like 999 times. Right? And I would just run that script, go back to sleep, and set my alarm for like 2 a.m. Because then when I wake up, oh, okay, it's connected now. So I and
Oh, okay.
and
I get
so
it. Yeah, yeah.
and so I and so the thing is, since the internet was unlimited, as long as you had credits between those hours, everyone was trying to dial in during those hours, so you'd always get a busy tone. Yeah, and yeah, I remember doing that, and my dad caught me a couple of times and like, hey, what are you doing here awake? So he never did scold me for it, because it didn't really last that long, because after a while I quit Ragnarok Online. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
again, this was one of the wild west days of MMORPGs, and it was in
Oh,
hindsight
yeah.
it was a terrible game with really bad balance,
Mm-hmm.
and the community was total crap, but it was super addictive.
Mm.
so,
Well,
so
like, and I think the MMOs are a whole other beast in and of themselves. Because I remember, I mean, the very first popular MMO was EverQuest, which came out in the late, which was popular in like 1998, 1999. But I think the first MMO that became really huge, though, like really big amongst even casual gamers, was Warcraft, World of Warcraft.
World of Warcraft.
And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I think I think that helped helped people come up with ways to fight like addictions, like game, like, it really brought out that how people can get addicted to games, how people can get addicted to video games, and how um like people, I've heard of people who would for example, like my brother, when we were in college, we had part-time jobs. I remember he would work, there was a period where he would just work the bare minimum he needed to pay rent so that he could spend time playing World of Warcraft. Like, you know um
Mm-hmm.
and it really, as far as seeing how toxic the online communities can be, especially with video games, it really brought a lot of that stuff to mainstream, which led developers to change the way that they make some of these games to fight like those issues that people can have as a result of it. So I think a lot of
Right.
the innovations in profanity filtering, and I mean, which existed before, but a lot of the innovations in how to make a game so that um quote unquote safer for people, on one aspect, it helped with that, but it also, I think, at the same time, people who might want to take advantage and make games to take advantage of that, also it educated them too, because I think that's why you saw the advent of a lot of free to play MMOs, so that people would go on there, or kids, and it was almost like gambling, where with the loot box systems, you buy this thing and you gamble, and you can get like really rare items and awesome items. And so these games, you can play them for free, but then if you want to get a leg up, or if you want to level up faster or whatever, you have to pay extra. And so it all that also led
Mm-hmm.
to, the innovation in those areas too. But some countries, like in Europe, I've heard of made laws, or making laws, to make it illegal for gaming developers to do that, so that
Mm.
so that people won't, have those problems, or especially to protect kids, because like the whole idea is gambling, you're only, like, in some countries there's a legal age for gambling, and so they're trying to say that having some of these features in these games is a form of gambling, and so you're technically breaking the law by encouraging kids to
Hmm.
gamble. And so I mean there's a lot of that there too. So there is a you're right, there's Andrew, there's a lot especially with online that people need to be aware of. And I think part of the problem too is getting back to the parents thing, is that it's changing so much so fast that it's hard to keep up. Like the things are changing so fast that compared
Hmm.
to like my parents' generation to my generation raising kids, like I've had people say to me, like, I'm glad I don't have kids now. I'm glad I raised my kids 30 years ago because I don't know if I could do handle all this stuff. And I'm thinking,
Right.
well, I mean, for me, I mean, it hasn't been that bad, but like I could understand, especially like in a big city or urban environment, where I don't know, I tend to feel that it's probably not as safe for your kids, especially like to be out and about. It's probably more dangerous than being in a small town. So like there's
Hmm.
a lot more to worry about there, and so I can see why parents would be more comfortable with their kids playing video games instead. But then at the same time, and like you said, there's a lot of predators out there, and so, but it is there, and
Yeah.
then because it's changing so often, it's a very challenging. Even me, I find I'll get surprised with like how fast. What was it? I was listening to a podcast. I think it was. Yeah, I was listening to a podcast called um Colin's Last Stand, and it was called Knockback, where him and his brother, Dagan Moriarty, talk about retro things, and they were talking about Home Alone, but he kind of the brother Colin. Or not Colin, Dagan said that he noticed that kids, because they were talking about buying toys for kids for Christmas. He said he
Hmm.
noticed that kids seem to be spending less time on certain, not obsessions, but certain things, and moving on to something else a lot quicker than we did when we were kids. So like if your kids are into Minecraft right now, maybe 6 months from now they're like, oh, Minecraft, I don't play that anymore. Whereas, when we were growing up, like if you loved Star Wars, let's say, you were into Star Wars from like 1978 to like 1985 or something. You know what I mean? Like it's a
Right.
huge change to what's popular, and it's all happening so fast, and I think parents really
Well,
have to contend with that.
I also think the reason for some of that is just because uh, with certain games, there's either a story to tell or an experience to be had, and then after a while you kind of get it, and then you're ready to move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Which, like, I do a lot with my friends. Like, um, at one point, maybe we'll play some Minecraft together or something, and then a little while later, we'll get a bit bored of what we're doing, and then we'll try something else out. But then we'll come back to it later and then try it again. So maybe they will like maybe it's a little different for kids if it's like a fad sort of thing. So if Minecraft is the big deal, if that's what you're talking about for 6 months, and then something else comes up like Fortnite for a little bit. But I don't know. Were you saying that it was like a fad that Star Wars was a big thing for a little while longer?
Well,
Or
I was just mentioning how like this guy had mentioned that it seems that kids these days don't spend as much time on these fads or these things as they used to, like these
hmm.
things that they're interested in. It seems to go by quicker, like not just video games, but like anything, whether it's a TV show they're into or whatever. It seems like they seem to spend are spending less time and moving on quicker to other things. And there's so much things happening, and on top of that, on a broader, more macro scale, things are happening at a different pace. Things are changing, and I mean,
Hmm.
look at the smartphone, for example. Like, I mean, how quickly we went from flip phones and texting to touch screens and browsing to the point where like you literally have like you even need a
Yeah.
home computer anymore? Like some people, like they used to have to buy a desktop computer so they can do these basic tasks and go online and do these things. But if you have a smartphone and you have a good smartphone, you don't need a computer anymore, depending on what you're using it for. Like if you just want to browse the internet and watch a TV show or do this, do that, you don't,
Mm-hmm.
or participate, you don't need a computer anymore to do this stuff. Like there's a camera built into your phone. You can do web chats and stuff like using your phone. I mean, you don't,
Right.
it's happened so quick. It's become such a big part of the, what's the word? Is it zeitgeist, or like our main, our culture,
Yeah.
our,
You don't even need a good smartphone. A crappy smartphone will do.
Yeah,
yep.
yeah, really.
So-
I mean, yeah, but on this topic, I mean, you could just see what Jonathan Pajot or Burn Power have said about time, like how, now that we have these vehicles and these smartphones where we can get somewhere really fast and then we can get the information pretty much instantaneously or talk to someone across the other side of the world right now
yeah.
at this
Like what
moment.
we're doing now.
Yeah, I know,
Yes,
isn't
like
it
exactly
crazy?
what we're doing right now,
Yeah,
talking to someone on the other side of the planet in an
12
entirely
hours
different
away.
time zone. Yeah,
Yeah.
it, it's just it's like uh, time is really differently interacted with now than it used to be. So it
Yeah, I'm
used to
pretty
take
sure
time to go get information or get somewhere or something.
I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure we could like I could probably dig a hole in the ground and eventually reach the Philippines from where I live. I think you are
Yeah, really.
literally on the
Yeah.
other side of the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, more or less.
But
Yeah,
you're
so
right,
that
Andrew.
definitely affects people. Sorry, what was that?
I said you're right, Andrew, about the time.
Yeah, yeah.
We definitely, I mean, I'll even notice in myself too, like how more impatient I am when it comes to looking something up. Like you want that instant, result. Like I used to memorize, I used to memorize phone numbers of friends. I still don't have my own parents' phone number memorized. I have it saved on my landline phone, and I just look it up when I'm gonna call them. Like I don't even I have my home phone number memorized and my work number, but
Mm-hmm.
and my brother's phone number because I used to have that number myself. But anybody else I know, I honestly have to go into
Yeah,
my phone or whatever to get it. And it's same thing I think with certain information, and that we don't, our brains, we just don't we're not trained to store certain information anymore. It just kind of leaves our whatever our consciousness or whatever we're paying attention to, and we maybe don't store it in the same way that we used to, because we know that we can just
right.
go and get it online, and it's altered our behavior. It's altered our, like, I think some people now wouldn't even know how to use a map, like a road map. They need to go somewhere, they just turn on their
Oh
GPS and away they go. They don't think, what if your GPS stops working? Like,
yeah.
really, I mean, you should kind of know where you're going before you go, and just use the GPS as like a guide, because hey, like it can quit. You never know. The satellite could fail, or the device could fail, or your whatever. And then you're like, how do I get there? So
Yeah.
I think that people are losing, some people probably, lose their ability to, even do things like follow directions, read a map. What's a map? What's that? You mean like that thing on my phone? No, it's on a piece of paper, and there's like
Yeah.
roads and stuff, and a thing called the
Yeah.
legend. And you use this thing called the legend to like know what these symbols mean, so you know what what kind of road you're on.
Well, it's kind of
Right.
helpful when you're like you're in the developing world, and Manila is one big construction site. So so if you had a roadmap from 2 years ago, it would be like, hey, there was nothing there 2 years ago, and now it's there's like a completely
The
new
map's changing
new
all the
town. Yeah,
time.
Yeah,
yeah. So it's kind of helpful that way. But I still have a compass and a roadmap in my glove box. So
It doesn't hurt to be
so
prepared.
yeah. So I've used it a couple of times, but and when I started driving, I didn't have a smartphone, and if I had to get somewhere, I would study the map, and I'd rely on my usual sense of direction and stuff. And if I got there once, I could get there every single time.
Right.
But
yeah,
nowadays I have my
yeah,
smartphone. I'd put it on Waze or Google Maps, and I'd go there. And even if I paid all, if even if I tried to pay attention to all of the landmarks that I pass, if I do it in daytime, there's no traffic, so I don't really have to think a lot of stuff, to think too hard about getting there.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I go back, I still have to use my map, my app rather, the Google Maps or Waze or whatever, because
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't register in my head the same way that I had to navigate these streets in the specific, and
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, exactly.
yeah, it all you guys are right. All of this stuff changes so fast, and I think what the concern of parents nowadays, that are the same age of as we are, more or less, is that it's just hard to keep up with this stuff. When we were kids, it was more of a wild west, but at the same time, things were a little bit slower paced than they used to be.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and now it's like, but again, there are also a lot of new features, new innovations that are, um, like like Mike said, it's the one reason I never really got into playing Counter Strike online. I only played it in computer cafes and LAN parties,
Mm-hmm.
because the community was just so toxic, and
Yeah.
you could never connect to a decent server where you either had incompetent players or you had trolls and griefers all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And that's the great thing
yeah,
about playing with your friends instead of
yeah,
online is if somebody cheats, they're there to confront them,
yeah, yeah,
and kids will do
yeah,
that with each other.
Exactly. Or you could
yeah,
just cheat just to bug your friends and have a good time, and it becomes a fun thing, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
You know.
it's
You,
funny, yeah.
you can just be trolling each other, and you all
Yeah.
know, like you're playing this game, but you're playing a completely different game, right?
Yeah.
And
Everybody
yeah,
knows what the game the other person's playing. As opposed to
yeah,
online, there will be people who will try as much as possible to cheat and cheat as much as they can, and it'll get really annoying because they're not there to laugh with you about it or anything. They're just being annoying. So
I
yeah,
mean,
I
there's
think
one aspect of that that's good for kids, though, is that sometimes it forces them to face situations where they have to deal with people that are behaving certain ways, and that, because out in the real world, people don't always act how they should, and you sometimes it kind of socializes them a little bit
yeah.
too, right?
Oh
I
yeah.
think that sometimes it's good for them to have that experience too, right? Because then they don't expect, they don't have unrealistic expectations towards how people should act towards them. I mean, it's one thing to say, be polite, and people should be polite to you, but it's another thing to like know that some people are just not very
yeah,
nice. Some people are jerks, and you have to learn how to deal with those kinds of people. And if you don't encounter
Yeah.
them enough, you might not handle it well. They might not handle it well. So again, that's another part of exposing them to the world, that it's a good thing in a sense, as long as it's, again, in a balanced way, and it's not too much. It's not, but it's just enough to, you're playing when they're at the right age. They might play with some people that don't always play fair, or are rude or whatever, and they got to learn how to deal with those people in a healthy way, and not just
Yeah.
break down and get upset, or react in a way that might make the situation worse, and
Yeah.
it'll bleed out into their real life, to when in their jobs, like, as part of their development, right? So then when they're dealing with real people, they'll have a better, they'll have that experience to be able to do that without breaking down and needing therapy because somebody hurt their
Yeah.
feelings or something. you know
I guess that would help with moments where somebody does something you don't like, but you just don't have. Sometimes in games, you just don't have a chance to respond, to say anything, to see them face to face, or anything like that. Sometimes it just
Yeah.
happens, and you have to deal with it, something that somebody else did to you, and you don't really get a chance to respond sometimes. So I guess it helps with situations like that.
Oh yeah, because you have to be. Sometimes you're right. You have to be patient. You can't like I'm the type of person I like to deal with things right away and fix and like if there's a
Hmm.
confrontation, I like to resolve it so that we can move on. I don't know if it's because it's a man thing or what it is, but I do know that some people, you know what, you do have to give it a day. You needed to give
Yeah.
them time. You got to give them time to process things. Instead of so patience is something that in those kinds of situations is warranted, and it can be very difficult, and sometimes people need to learn to be patient and give something time instead of reacting right away, and in a
Yeah.
situation like what you're saying, it forces them to do that because they're being forced to let it go or move on.
Hmm. Yeah, it's definitely a lesson in patience for sure. But I still think playing together with friends is infinitely better than trying to play with people you don't know.
Oh
If
yeah,
you can
yeah.
do that, that's a great idea. And I don't know, that was something I was talking about with you, Carlos. I don't know how much parents talk with each
It's
other
okay,
about
the
these
video
kinds of
is.
things. What's that?
Sorry, I didn't realize my microphone wasn't muted. I apologize.
Oh. All right. Well, yeah, so I don't know how much uh, parents engage with each other about video games or in terms of their kids or anything like that, but I definitely think it would be great for a lot more kids to be playing with each other rather than with strangers. Because I know, I mean, kids play together outside, they do all sorts of stuff together. So I think being able to expose them to playing with each other more rather than seeking to go on the internet with strangers would be great because they do everything else together in a community. Why not
Yeah,
do that together
yeah,
too? So,
yeah, and that's why I had fond memories of the free space community because it was small. So you played with the same like two dozen
right.
people all the time, and you got to know each other, and you got to know, oh, this guy likes team versus team, and these other guys like the
Hmm.
cooperative missions, and so
Right.
and
I have
this other
friends
one,
like
yeah,
that too.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
and that's also why that's also on the flip side. That's what soured me with um, playing Counter Strike online or
Hmm.
Ragnarok online because it was just totally random and you had no idea who you're playing with and
Right.
and you so um
Although, I also think that depending on the type of game that someone is playing, the type of people that are playing it will also change too. Like, there's this one game I know called Rust where you can walk around and take down some trees and some rocks and build up a little house and make your base there. But pretty much the point of the game is to go find other people's bases, tear their doors down, and take all their stuff and bring it to yours. And the people in that community can be really, it's awful, can be awful. But
yeah.
then you go to another game like the new Animal Crossing. People say that the kind of people that play that new Animal Crossing game, the community of people that play it is like the most wholesome community ever, or something like that. So, and in that game, what are you doing? You're like talking to like different types of animals, like raccoons and pigs that live in little village houses, and you build a bridge or chop a tree down and sell it to the like. It's not like tearing down your neighbor's house and taking all their stuff. So I
I think
definitely
that
think
what you're saying though, Andrew, I think about that Rust game, I think that also can be a good teaching moment for kids though, because uh, if if they're playing a game where the point of the game is to do that and someone gets upset, it's like, well, hey, that's the point of the game. So that might
Yeah.
be a good tool for them to learn that, to accept if you're going to participate in a specific activity that have specific rules and that is how the game is to be played. If you
right.
can't handle that, you know what I mean? So
Like you
it'd be
know
a
what
good
you're
learning.
getting into.
Exactly. So it's like know what you're getting into. If you can't handle it, then don't do it. Don't complain. Then don't
Yeah.
you don't run and complain. Just say, oh, this is more than I can handle, and leave. I think that's a good tool because I think there is an issue sometimes with people and kids where, we hear all about it, and they can't handle. They're unable to handle any kind of anything that uh, causes them any kind of failure, or anything that kind of goes against makes things difficult for them because of that. So I think
Yeah.
it's a good you know a game like that would be good learning tool for somebody who might have issues with that, accepting things not always going their way. You know.
That's true. Um, yeah, and but for me, if I played a game and then I realize that I do not like how it's being played and I don't like the kind of game it is, I just don't play it anymore.
Yeah,
I have
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
a
good.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
good.
like yeah, I have a friend who there's a bunch of us who play this game called Destiny, and there's a lot of a lot of the game is playing against the environment. You're playing against like uh the AI where there's monsters in the area and you gotta take them down and get to the next point. And then there's another part of the game where you can play against each other, and it's sort of like Counter-Strike. You run around and shoot each other and stuff. And he just will not play that part. He has a couple times, but he does not like it, so he just doesn't play it because of the PvP option. Because we know how people can be in online, so he just doesn't do that part. And then we go and do the other fun stuff that we like.
Well, that's good too. Actually, that's a good thing that you can tell parents too that are concerned about their kids and video games, and they can teach their kids that if you're playing a game you don't really like it, or you don't like what's being said or whatever, you don't have to play it. And
Yeah.
if your friends are all playing it, but you don't want to, you don't have to. And you know,
Which is another
some
great lesson because then other people will bully kids for that, and then they'll be like, "Oh, what are you, a big wimp? Because you don't want to play against other people? You think you're not good enough or something?"
well, I
But it's
guess
like,
that's
no,
something
I
that
don't want to do that. It's a lesson
well,
in being able to say that too, I guess.
Yeah,
yeah,
you can just
character
tell those
building.
guys. You can just tell those guys. Yeah, deal with it. I don't have to play with you. So,
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I know because my daughter, we went through that with Snapchat. Ironically enough, it was boys at school, or one or two boys that kept saying to her, "Oh, you're not allowed to have Snapchat." I'm thinking like you'd think it would be girls, but it was boys. And I was thinking like,
Huh.
why are boys bugging you about not being allowed to have Snapchat? That's weird. Like, okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
what?
what? So then like it became an issue where she was getting upset about it. And I mean, I think she actually really wanted to have it, and I don't know if she might have been just saying that because she really wanted it and was trying to find a way to get my wife to say, okay, fine, you can have it in a limited capacity, or she legitimately
Mhm.
was upset but wanted it at the same time. I think it boiled down is I think she really did want to have it. We had, again, like video games, this program, we had restricted it and we said, no, you can't have it. And we put strict rules in where if we caught her using it, she would lose her phone for whatever
Mhm.
period of time. And so she was good about it. And she, after losing her phone at once, she didn't do it again. But after like a year or 2 years, she reapproached and said, do you think I could try this now? And well, she was at an age where, and she had demonstrated enough maturity with regards to saying no, and putting up with people giving her a hard time at school. She still didn't do it. We said, all right, you can have it, but you can only use it for, you can only have so many friends or certain people as your friends, kind of thing, and set these very strict boundaries for it, which seems to be working. Now with my other child, it's the whole YouTube and like wanting to watch YouTube all the time and finding ways around being able to watch YouTube and these TikTok best of TikTok compilations and all these 5-minute crafts and all this stuff. So we've been having trouble with my youngest daughter, being on YouTube all the time. And because the thing is with YouTube is the good thing about it is if they're watching YouTube from an account that like they're not logged in, it's restricted. So you can't watch content that's deemed mature. I mean, obviously they're still going to be able to watch stuff that's like probably not appropriate for them, but you can't watch mature content unless you actually have an account. You know, and you log in. At the same
Mm-hmm.
time, if she's has the app on her phone, which was logged into my account, I could see exactly what she was watching, which annoyed me because it affected the algorithm on my account, and I would always have to go in and delete all these videos she was watching so that it wouldn't be trying to show me these
Hmm.
stupid 5-minute craft videos or TikTok compilations. But anyway, so yeah, that's been a challenge. Again, I think it's going to be a matter of, you know, giving her responsibility and trying to, you know, if she will commit to that, and then you know, there's rewards that can come with, you know, um, being responsible and trusting. And once you develop that trust, then it's like, okay, you can use it because I trust you to use it appropriately. So we'll see how that
Mm-hmm.
goes.
Right.
And the one online game that I play nowadays, and I got into it more for curiosity, was I really enjoyed the story mode, is Luigi's Mansion 3. So I don't know if any of
The
you guys have.
Switch.
Yeah, I don't know if
Okay.
any of you guys have played Luigi's Mansion, but it's like it's basically in the genre of Resident Evil, except
Oh, geez.
Oh.
yeah. So
Except it's
survival.
I
Mario.
didn't
Yeah,
know
yeah,
Luigi got
yeah,
so terrifying. Oh,
Yeah, I thought it
yeah,
was a
geez.
yeah,
Ghostbusters ripoff. I thought
yeah,
it was a
yeah.
Ghostbusters ripoff where you have to catch ghosts like
Yeah,
Ghostbusters or
it
something.
it is, but you know,
Oh,
it's
okay.
along those survival horror puzzle,
Oh, okay.
resource management genre, but a lot more
Cool.
kid friendly. Yeah, so I was playing. It's like, hey, this is just like Resident Evil. So I played it online, and its online mode is basically, you can play like 5 levels or 10 levels or 20 levels, and it's auto generated. And every 5 levels,
Mm-hmm.
there's a boss, right? So I was actually surprised at how different the experience was from, when I last touched an online game playing Ragnarok
Mm-hmm.
and Counter Strike and Free Space. Because for one thing, the game only gives you two options. Well, it gives you two options. You play with anyone or you play with friends, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's just those two things, and then you choose how many levels you want to play. Like it's basically like how long do you want to be playing this? 5, 10, 20, 20 levels.
Mm-hmm.
And there is no chat functionality aside from very basic signals. There are only three signals, which is um, over here, help, and thank you, right?
That's
Oh,
good.
And
thank you.
and
Yeah.
there are only three signals, and I found myself like, hey, this is actually quite enjoyable. Not ha- having that constraint where you don't have to keep typing out to people saying that, hey, come over here because there are like 5 ghosts here. I need help.
Yeah.
So
Right.
there's a power up available in this room. Take it. Or so um and
I think
one
that
thing that
thank you one is a big deal too.
yeah,
Sorry, just
yeah, yeah.
put that
A
in
lot
there.
of games have implemented that now. I think
Yeah.
Star Wars Battlefront 2, like the newer one, was like that too, where you can't actually even. I think you could do like team chat, but it doesn't like pop up on your screen, and a lot of and I don't think you could actually communicate to people. I don't think you could actually talk to people. You can only use the like, let's go and form up and like those like catchphrases and the dances and stuff. I think that's all you can do in that game. I don't think you could actually do voice chat. I'm pretty sure. I don't think you can. Yeah. So that it avoids that whole issue of people saying inappropriate things
Yeah,
over the.
and one thing that I found curious about it, and I'm wondering if Nintendo actually implemented this, is that in the beginning I found it very difficult to find competent teammates. But then as I played the
Hmm.
game more and more, it seems like my teammates were getting better. And I'm wondering if they're actually, if you choose to with anyone, I'm wondering if it's actually studying your play style and matching up with people whom it thinks
Or
you can cooperate with
yeah.
Yep.
better, or
A
picks the
lot of
games,
yep.
yeah, or
Some they
picks
do
the,
that.
yeah.
They
and
do. Yep.
and not only that, but since every level is auto generated, it it might also be picking the sort of game that you and all of the other participants find more enjoyable. So I'm wondering if it's
Mm-hmm.
actually gotten to that level, because I'm like, um when I started playing this, it was like I could barely get we could barely get past like 2 or 3 levels, but now I could
Wow.
regularly at least get to the first boss level.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I really got that much better at the game. It seems like I had way more competent teammates, I'm
I
just
think
wondering if it's
I,
matching me more to other players that are similar skilled.
I think you're
And
correct.
yeah.
I think you're correct. I know apparently Fortnite does that. Like they have tiers based
Yeah.
on your level that you're at, and will match you with players that are at a similar level. And I think there are functions. I don't think it's like super smart AI or anything. I think what it's done does is you, as you play the game, you earn a certain amount of points, or you earn a certain in a certain area, and the game's programmed to know that that you have a certain play style based on whether it's a certain points or a certain way that you do something. And so it matches you with players that also have similar, either at that similar level or have completed, maybe you like a specific type of game. They'll put you with those people that like that. Oftentimes it's just as simple as putting you with people in your region that have a similar, like a server where a ping is low so you don't get
Oh
lag.
yeah.
That's usually what it does. But I know some games you won't be able to play with players that are a higher level than you or better than you, and unless you're in like a group, or unless you actually attain a certain level, or maybe have logged in a certain amount of hours in the game, and it knows that, and then it matches you with those people. I think Halo was doing that too. The newer Halo, like Halo Master Chief Edition or whatever, because I got it
Mm-hmm.
on Steam, and I think it possibly does that on certain maps, but you have to kind of choose that style. I think it's like an option where you can do like standard, or you can choose to play with only people that are at your skill level. So there are games that have that built into it. And you could be right though, that Luigi's Mansion 3 might be that advanced where it is doing that.
And
It could
So
be, yeah.
yeah, because every to give you more of an idea of how it works. So like every level, it's usually just catch the ghost, but
Mm-hmm.
it varies it a little bit. Like it changes the rooms, it changes the type of ghosts that are there. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe it knows what ghosts you're pretty good at killing. And
Oh.
so and there are also other levels where it's just the objective is not to eliminate the ghosts, but to like kill bats. That's another enemy in the game,
Okay.
or collect money or rescue the toads, right? So those are the other game modes. So I'm sure it's collecting some data about, okay, so this player is particularly good about doing this game mode. He tends to use this power up, and um, he is good at dealing with this type of enemy. So yeah, there are there's probably some of those things that it's collecting, and not only matching with other players, but also generating the levels um
Mm-hmm.
according to I mean, I don't know for sure, but I'm just speculating, because that's one game that got the more I played it, it got more enjoyable, and I don't think it's because of my skill level. so
I don't know. Maybe
so
you did
yeah.
get better at the game.
Maybe I did get better, but before, I used to be so frustrated because we would lose because of some teammate who was dawdling in one room.
Oh.
So and there were ghosts in this other room, and we're getting creamed in. so
Oh
so
but
yeah.
what
yeah.
you're talking about though also can lead into a good discussion about, for parents, where there are games that study, that collect information about you and about the players, and that if you're the type of person that's very private, and you're very, suspicious about government or companies or corporations having your data, or how you use your computer or whatever, you can use that to educate your kids and say, like, I don't want you playing that game because it does this, this, and this, and I don't want it doing that. Like some games,
Yeah.
in order to
Uh,
play them, you have to agree. Like a lot of people don't realize this, but a lot of the free apps and stuff you get for your phone and games and whatnot, um, you agree they're letting you use it for free, but it's really not free because what they're doing is they're either advertising to you or they're collecting data from your phone on how you use your phone and you don't realize it. And you're agreeing to that. Like one, actually, I think TikTok, that's one of the things that TikTok was doing. It was my understanding that the Chinese government was collecting data off people's phones. And that's why the American, like, that's why the people, anyone in the American army was told they weren't allowed to use it. And why they were thinking of banning it in America, because the Chinese government obviously owns stake in that company because it's a communist country and they pretty much own a little bit of everything when it comes to. I mean, I could be wrong, but that's the standard communist way of doing things. Um, so anyway, yeah, so if you're very paranoid or if you're very suspicious of that kind of thing, or you don't like the kind of thing, then yeah, definitely, it's something to be aware of so that your kids, like with my kids' phones, I always say, like, don't be putting that crap on your phone because you're just filling it up with junk and it's gonna, when you have a slower internet connection, that was my big thing. I didn't want my kids getting any kind of malware or any kind of adware stuff
Hmm.
because I had a 5 megabit connection. And yeah, it seems like at one time that was fast, but now 5 megabits might as well be dial up. And that's what I had until recently. So I had to make sure like they weren't filling up their phones with all this garbage that was trying to download ad videos on their phone while they're playing, and at the same time I'm trying to do this or that, and next thing you know, like my bandwidth goes down the toilet
Yeah.
because there's a bunch of adware running on these phones. So it is good for parents to know that too, like especially with phones, monitor what your kids are apps are they're installing, because apparently there was one app that was really popular last year where you took a picture of yourself and it aged you. I mean, it was some Russian company that did it, but apparently it was actually using that data and giving it to like the Russian government to, because they were working on technology for face recognition software, and I don't know if it had to do with deepfakes, but it was training this
Hmm.
AI. People using this app was actually training an AI that was going to be used by the Russian government for like some kind of application. So once people like figured that out, they're like, oh yeah, I don't want to use that app. So I mean, that's another area I think parents should be aware, because what they do is they make these games or this stuff that kids find really neat, and then the kids download it and they don't realize what they're getting. By using these apps or these games, they don't realize what they're doing.
Right.
As a result, um,
That's true.
nothing's ever free. There's no free lunch.
Yeah, yeah, there's no free lunch. Indeed.
That's true.
Yeah. If
Although,
if
oh,
you
what were
don't
you
know what
gonna
the
say?
product is, if you don't know what the product is, you're the product. You know. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Although, I think for games like that Luigi's Mansion one or for Fortnite, I think the way they use the information is more based on like your score that you're able to get in the
Yeah,
game more than like your email or your password or something.
yeah. Or
But
how
that
to
is
improve the
definitely,
experience to
Yeah, yeah.
find bugs and things like that. Yeah.
yeah.
I usually
Although
say
that is
no. I
definitely
usually
a
say
thing to be
no to
concerned
those,
about.
but I usually say
Oh
no
yeah, me
to
too.
those kinds of things, but unless it's a game like Cyberpunk 2077, which is full of bugs, and they're like, we want to make the game better. Can we, get your data so that we make improvements? I'll say yes, because it's so buggy and I want them to fix the bugs or something. I might do
And they're
that. But like
usually,
when I install Windows, I always say no. Like when I'm installing Windows on my kids' computers, I always go, no, 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 because they want to collect all this data. No, no, no. And then I disable Cortana
oh yeah.
and all that stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
disable location, disable
Yeah.
whatever, so
Yeah.
That's another thing you definitely have to watch for is if you're ever installing something, you have to read exactly what you're installing because sometimes it'll have little check marks with extra programs that you don't need and it'll already be checked so that you'll skip past it and install it anyway. But you gotta
yeah.
look and be like, okay, I do want to get the Microsoft Word, but I do not want like random ads of sandals every day, so I gotta uncheck that
Yeah.
program from the
Or the
list.
Bing toolbar I remember that was the
Or
thing.
the Bing toolbar.
The Bing toolbar, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that was it. That was it. I remember in 2004, 2005 when malware was like becoming a huge thing, and like I worked for Gateway Computers doing IT over the phone, and I remember I'd get all these calls. People were having all these problems with the computer, and it was because of malware. And I remember they had a policy where um, they called it out of scope if it was a problem caused by malware, because it wasn't an actual problem with the computer or the software. It was something that they were doing on their computer that caused it. So if they wanted help to fix it, they had to basically purchase this anti-malware software, or pay for an extra warranty so that you can maybe help them reinstall Windows. Because oftentimes what ended up happening was their computer was so badly overloaded that with malware that the only solution to fix it over the phone was to do what they called an FFR format something and reload, and and that was a big process, especially back in with Windows 98 and Windows XP. So definitely you're right about that. The little check marks, you'll still see it every once in a while. It's not as
I
common as it
do,
used to be,
yeah.
Yeah.
but yeah, I still see it, and it's in the most uh, odd places where you didn't think it would be. I can't remember what it was, but there was a software application that I installed, and it was like a legit software because I just did a reinstall Windows on my computer just because I like to do that every once in a while. And I remember installing this. I'm thinking, why does it want me to install this extra crap? I'm thinking this is supposed to be like a legit, like why do they need to do this? Because it used to be like people that were trying to make money because it was like open source or it was
Right.
free, or whatever. But yeah, you still have to watch for that, especially So yeah,
Oh
your
yeah,
kids need to
definitely
look out
open
for that.
source stuff too.
Funnily enough, the sort of software that's most likely to do that nowadays, ironically, are the anti-malware and antivirus stuff. It's like I'm like, oh, I just installed an MP3 converter. Why do I have a VAST on my computer now? So,
Yeah, you're right.
so
Yeah.
McAfee and
yeah,
Adobe do that
McAfee,
too.
yeah,
Yeah, and
like
Adobe. Yeah, when you install
stop
Adobe,
doing that.
uh, yeah, yeah,
I don't need another one. I have 10 of
Yeah,
them now.
yeah, and I think it's because actually I've got good experience with Windows Defender,
Hmm.
yeah,
caching a lot of crap, and it's not
yeah.
very intrusive either. So,
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
actually a
yeah,
lot better. Yeah, I mean, honestly, people have gotten smart. Like I've always known this. Like a lot of those programs they just don't work. I mean, all they did was slow your computer down. So for years, I just I just never had antivirus, and I just made sure that I didn't go to certain websites. That's really the only thing you could do, was just don't go to certain sites, don't download certain files, don't do certain things. And if you
Yeah.
do, just be prepared to reinstall Windows. I actually remember it was so bad. I remember one time I reinstalled Windows and XP. As soon as I hooked up my computer to the internet, like while I was installing it, I got like an ad right away. So like somehow, I don't know what happened, but I don't know if it was related to my IP address, but like I ended up getting, even right as soon as I installed Windows, I got an ad pop up right away, and I was like, oh, okay, this is sketchy. So like I was like, oh, and I had to do it again. And this time I did it without having the internet plugged in. I made sure that I had all my stuff installed and everything. But
Hmm.
the antivirus was useless. The only useful antivirus or useful software I had was the anti-malware stuff that would remove the ads from your computer, because before ad blockers and all that were a thing, you would go online and you would accumulate this malware that was like small, and so like there were programs like called adware or adaware, that you
Hmm.
would scan your computer. And now all I use is a program called CCleaner. Every so often I'll use that, but that doesn't really get rid of malware, but it kind of gets rid of some of the extra crap that you get from browsing that you don't catch. Or you just use disk cleanup on Windows 10, and just remove, it gets rid of a lot of the extra crap. But yeah, Windows Defender is definitely, in my opinion, as far as antivirus goes, a lot of it's useless. So I think Windows Defender actually does a pretty good job, considering if someone really wants to get in your computer, they're going to get in. And really, it's based on your behavior most of the time. Yeah.
Hmm.
The majority of the time you get viruses because it's something you're doing that you shouldn't be doing, or you went
Yeah.
somewhere because you clicked on an email you shouldn't have, and you weren't being careful enough.
Yeah. I recently went through my computer to free up some storage space and deleted pretty much everything that I don't use and uh don't want anymore. And I deleted a bunch of like random extra pictures that I took in a game or something, and like bits of MP3s or something that weren't used for anything, and tons of old files from other things that were installed, and I uninstalled, but it didn't delete all the files and stuff like that. And I think I accidentally deleted a few fundamental features of Windows 7, but I didn't really need them anyways, so I deleted them.
Mm.
But yeah, I think it really helps to keep it nice and clean too.
Well, it's a good lesson for your kids. Again, going back to the games, with these concepts, like educate yourself on them and teach your kids, because it'll save them a lot of headaches too. If they're careful about what they're doing online and what they're downloading.
Yeah.
I always cringe when people talk about, oh, I go to this website and watch my TV episodes on this whatever website, and I'm thinking,
Yeah. Oh,
like
yeah.
Isn't
I'm
it
down,
Some
sketchy?
pirate streams of it. Yeah.
yeah, I'm
Yeah,
just like,
I stay away
so
from
like,
that.
then and especially if you have a low bandwidth internet, so it's like I was really careful, like I don't go to those websites, because it's like you'll screw up our bandwidth. And oh yeah, it's definitely something that parents now need to be aware of, especially if they have limited bandwidth. And because it can cause a lot of problems too. And you got a lot now, these Bitcoin people that are trying to ransom people. They get their files, and I'm not going to unlock your computer unless you pay X number of dollars. you know that's a big thing that happens now
Hmm.
to a lot of people. I just go, oh, okay, well, I'll just erase my computer, thanks a lot, goodbye. Like, whatever, see you
Yeah.
later. Like, I'll just reinstall Windows, thanks, bye.
Yeah, I'll just put it
I don't
back
need those
on.
files.
I'm gonna have
I
to
backed up
download
my files.
everything, which it'll take a day, I guess. Oh
Yeah.
Yeah,
well.
I
see you
remember way
later.
back in high school, a classmate of mine actually physically lugged his desktop computer to my house, saying, "Hey, Carlos, can you fix this?" Because yeah, and then like, yeah, what's the problem? Well, it's really slow now, and my mom was using it, and then there was porno popping up when when she was browsing, and she got really angry at me. So, can you fix it? Like, yeah, yeah. Anyway, we've yeah, so we're like 2.5 hours now, and I have to
Oh
start
wow.
preparing breakfast. So I've got like maybe 10-15 minutes left. So yeah, I I think that this is really enjoyable, gentlemen. Thank you.
Yeah, it
Um,
was. I hope
we
it's
we
helpful to people.
yeah, we should do this again. Maybe with some other folks also.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but I guess that's one takeaway. It's just the usual. Educate yourself. Don't you have to give the kids exposure and responsibility appropriate to their age.
Yep.
Hmm.
And I like what Andrew said earlier, because we can talk about all of the other benefits of socialization, um,
Hmm.
developing certain skills, playing video games and stuff. But fundamentally, it's just another form of, well, it okay. So let me rephrase that. I wouldn't say it's just another form, but it's a form. It's
It's a
a
form of
form of
entertainment.
entertainment media. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and if you're gonna ask the question, like, am I going to allow kids to play like God of War or Grand Theft Auto um, in my household? Then do you allow Game of Thrones on your television?
Yeah, yeah.
Things like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So so I'm not outright gonna say yes or no. Because it's up to your prudential judgment to whether to allow that or not. But
Yeah.
maybe. So speaking of God of War, I have a little anecdote about that. When my son was like, he was 2 years old, and he first started talking. So um, we were having lunch at my grandma's house, and my cousins will go there, and they'd bring their PlayStation and play some games after lunch. So my cousin was there playing God of War, and he was in the middle of a battle scene where he was cutting some heads off. And so my son came up behind him and said, "Oh no!" and my cousin turned around and said, like, "Oh no, your dad is going to kill me." so so
Oh,
so so,
jeez.
so yeah.
That
So
reminds me of Prince of Persia. I don't know if you guys remember the original Prince of Persia. I was at a friend's
yeah.
house, and it was like a platform side scroller, and the guy, he stepped into this blade that was going up and down, kind of like a guillotine, and then it would like showed all these guts and him stretching, and like after it sliced him in half or whatever. And I remember going, oh,
Oh, yeah.
oh, because you never saw that kind of thing in a video game. And I remember being
Hmm.
really little and going, oh,
Yeah.
whoa.
Yeah. So
Anyway.
And
Yeah, it was nice
any
talking to you
yeah
guys.
yeah and any last comments from y'all?
Hmm.
You go first, Andrew.
Uh, I would just say I don't think I think people I don't know how much people talk about video games with each other right now, especially parents, but I think people should do that. And I don't know if there's a stigma around it or anything, because I know people my age, uh, some people feel like it's a weird thing to play video games still a lot. But yeah, like I said, it's another form of entertainment like other things. So it's not that weird. So I think people should just try to have more discussions about it and figure this sort of thing we're talking about now, what's okay and what's not with other people. That's what
Yeah.
I'd say.
I think to add to what you're saying, I agree with you. And as far as my experience with other adults my age, it isn't really considered a weird thing because a lot of their kids play video games. So we
Hmm.
definitely, it's not a problem, at least where I work and the people I know to talk about video games, especially with their kids playing video games. But I guess reiterate Carlos there. Um, it boils down to just, yeah, it's a form of entertainment, and what you think is appropriate for your kids. Just use your judgment, do your research. And I don't think video games are bad for kids. I think if anything, it's a good tool. It can be used in many different ways, but bottom line, it's a good entertainment tool as long as it's done in an appropriate way and with boundaries and respectfully. And yeah, I don't think that so if I were to be asked by a parent, a Christian parent, if they should let their kids play video games, I would say, yeah, just just monitor what they're playing and be fair and reasonable, and whatever's age appropriate, wherever he feels age appropriate, and that's that. So yeah.
Hmm.
But anyways,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
and
my
and
opinion on it.
and then I'll leave you two with this one question to, I guess, wrap this all up, and I'll let you two answer first. But
Okay.
this is a question that comes up pretty frequently, and I know Catholic priests get asked this a lot, or some variation of it. It's like, will there be
Okay.
PlayStation in heaven?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Oh, I
What do you
remember
guys think?
something. I remember. Oh, I think Paul Van was quoting C.S. Lewis. I think when he was talking about that kid who likes chocolate, and then they're like in health class and they're learning about sexual things, and then he says, "Oh, do I get to eat chocolate when I eat or eat chocolate when I have sex?" And then the teacher's like, you could, but that's not necessarily like what you'd be thinking about at the time." And then I think C.S. Lewis said something like that's essentially what sex would be like for heaven. It's like, yeah, you could, but like that's not the most important, most wonderful thing that would be there. And I
Yeah.
know other priests who say, and people come to them and they're like, "Oh, well, would my dog be in heaven? Like, would I get to have my dog there?" And then I think Father Mike Schmitz said something like, "Well, if that's what would make you happy, then yeah, but like obviously, you know, God is what really makes you happy. But like if there's other things, you know what I'm talking about, like things that make you happy, then yeah, they would be there. But um, would PlayStation be in heaven? I don't know. Would it? I don't know.
I
It's in
think that
heaven.
I think that I think I'd like to say we don't really know enough to concretely say, one way or another. I think there's been a lot of people that have written a lot of books about what they think heaven's going to be like. I'd like to think that heaven will be like a place where um it'll be like will be I mean obviously, like, the heaven that we go to after we die isn't going to be the same heaven as when we get our resurrected bodies, and there's a new heaven, a new earth, and all that. Like, that's going to change. So there's going to be a point where we're going to have our earthly bodies and all that, and I think that we'll probably be consumed with worshiping God, um but I also think that we'll probably, based on like what some interpretations or some people's ideas are, is that they think that we'll probably have a lot of time to talk to each other and learn about um, each other's lives and things like music and learning to play, maybe musical instrument, like just doing things like that. I think, um, or
Mm-hmm.
growing a garden or something. I think stuff like that will probably be. I don't know. I would like to think we'd be doing things like that. Um, I mean, maybe it's possible, but maybe we'd have the opportunity to just like do things where we wouldn't want to do something like that because we'd be too busy, with other things. It's just one of
Perhaps.
those, because I think it's just one of those things as video games go more towards virtual reality, that we're going to be in a whole different reality that is way beyond anything we can imagine in it. And why would we want to be in something that's, you know, that's fake
Yeah.
when we're in like the best place we can be, I guess. So I don't know. That's my
Yeah.
answer to that.
Um, yeah. And I like to think that in heaven there's no lag or bugs. So, but
or trolls or
actually,
griefers
or trolls
or
or griefers. But
or
Yeah.
yeah.
I think the reason I would ask that question, because I know I asked that question about some things, like there's this thing I really like. Would it be in heaven too if I get there? Because I don't know, maybe it's questionable, like the PlayStation. But I know when I ask that question, it's like I really like this thing. Is it gonna be there? Because if it's not gonna be there, then maybe do I want to be there? I really want this thing to be there, but I think if you're asking a question like that, it's like if you're saying, um, well, if PlayStation is not going to be there, then I don't want to be there. Then I don't know. I
It
think
show you're
that's either a problem of you're focused on the wrong thing, or um, I don't know. I think maybe it's just thinking about the because I think there's things that are better than PlayStation. So
Yeah.
like,
No, you're right. You're focused exactly. It's like if you're worried about that, then you're not really worried about pleasing God. You know what I mean? The whole point of
Yeah.
Christianity, your
yeah, but
relationship
I
with
don't
God
think
and
Yeah, but I don't think it's like, oh, well, you shouldn't have anything that you like in heaven. Like it's going to be this miserable place.
no.
It's like, don't worry if you don't have your PlayStation or you don't have your, clarinet or piano music or these tasty oranges you really like. Like, don't worry about if you have none of that because there will be something better there. So,
Exactly.
but I
Yeah.
understand the concern because I really like it. I wanted to
Yeah.
be there.
It's fun, isn't it?
It's fun, I don't want to not have fun in heaven.
Yeah. And my own take on it is actually funny enough. I think you the two of you provided like two halves of my take of it, and yeah, that
Hmm.
C.S. Lewis illustration did come to mind. Because we were talking earlier about um, this open world, build your own game sort of games like
Hmm.
Roblox and Minecraft, and not only that, but whatever sort of game you can come up with games within those games that you
Hmm.
can play with other people, right? And I think that speaks to that speaks to our original vocation as co-creators,
Hmm.
way back before the fall. And when the whole of heaven and earth gets restored, I imagine we'll have all of that, not just in virtual reality, but in like real reality.
Real reality.
Yeah, yeah, like real reality, more than you can imagine, and you would not need some glowing screen and some electronic device to mediate. We will have all the
Yeah.
games. Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
have all the games, and we'll have all of the time to play all of the games.
Exactly,
Yeah,
but the games would be frivolous in
Yeah.
yeah,
comparison to what reality would be.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
so and I guess that that's actually a nice way to end, because then that if we are ever having this conversation again, then that might be the hook for the next topic, I guess, because we say real reality now, but again, one big pitfall with video games nowadays is that it's being used as sort of an escape for reality for a
That's
lot of
true.
Yeah.
people.
Yeah,
So
actually,
so
it's good.
so, so yeah. So yeah, and I guess that's why this question is being asked in the first place. It's like this is so fun. So would that be present in the ultimate reality? And yeah, like it will be,
Right.
but you will need a PlayStation for it.
Right.
Yeah, I think yeah.
Yeah, I
But yeah,
understand that.
yeah. So I gotta go now. So
Okay.
All right.
thank you, gents.
It's nice talking to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll end the recording now, and um, thank you so much. It's been a fun 2.5 hours.
Yeah, I enjoyed this.
Yep. Bye, guys.
Goodbye.